Hello everyone, how you doing? Hope you're having a beautiful morning, afternoon, night, whatever time zone you may be in. I just gotta really quickly check and make sure the game is coming through. It's got Twitch, Microsoft Chrome, Edenwood, and Am I Nima. I don't know why sound's coming out of any of those, but we need to put in this one. There you go. Her love like poison. Welcome in, everybody. This is another indie game that's been on my radar for a little bit because of one particular image that the game dev posted ages ago. I do not have the image in question on me right now, unfortunately. But trust me, it was a pretty good image, okay? It was pretty banging, and I was like, oh, okay. We're in for some dark romance. And I'm here for it. So this is the last of the 3 indie games that I had lined up for like my channel this week. I don't know why, I just really wanted to do a bunch of indie games this week. So we had Eden Wound and Am I Nima yesterday, and today we have Her Love Like Poison. I will say there is only one ending to this game that I have, like, according to the Steam page. So whatever happens, it just kind of happens. I don't know if we're going to be making any choices, or if this is a more, like, novel side of the visual novel genre. I don't know. But I'm here for some lesbians. I just really want some lesbians in my life, so why don't we go ahead and just get started? Ethel Briggs was trying to play the second movement of Mozart Violin Sonata number 21, but she wasn't having much luck. Honestly, the fact you can play violin at all is a W. There is an auto feature, but I don't think we're gonna use it. It had been months since she'd last picked up her violin, and the lack of practice had made her rusty. She had played this particular piece numerous times, not for any competitions, she had always been too shy to enter any despite Miss Manderley's gentle coaxing, but for her own satisfaction. Okay, so she's just a casual violinist. She doesn't, like, perform for, like, anything in particular. Okay. Gotta say, I really like the art direction. I keep staring at this bit of the violin here where, like, the line art's all blue to kind of match the moonlight that's hitting her, and the same with her hand. It's a really, not really a subtle touch, but I really like it. Mozart's Violin Sonata 21 was one of her favorites. Ethel wasn't a huge Mozart aficionado. She didn't like how upbeat most of his pieces were, how frothy, flippant, and inoffensive. On the whole, she thought Mozart was far too cheerful. Oh, okay. I'm not like other girls type energy. I see. Ethel much preferred the quiet, understated melancholy of Beethoven, or Chopin's clean, precise compositions. But there was something special about the Violin Sonata 21. This was one of Mozart's few sonatas in E minor, composed in Paris shortly after his mother's death. Ooh, I didn't know that actually. That's pretty cool. The first part was Alghero? I don't know how to pronounce that word. And it contained some of that familiar energy which is so distinctly Mozart. But the second was far more moving. The second movement of Mozart's Violin Sonata 21 had a special place in Ethel's heart, maybe because this was one of the first violin pieces she had heard. It was this piece which had inspired her to take up the violin in the first place. Aw, that's really cute. I like little sentimental bits like that. Mine is a lot less, cool. Sorry, I can hear something in the background. Hang on 1 second, guys. Alright, there we go. I think I fixed it. I think. Possibly. Alright, we're back in. Uh, yeah, so not nearly as sentimental. Well, it is sentimental, but like not nearly as cool or like profound. Mine will be seen as cringy. Sonic the Hedgehog is what got me into like drawing in the first place. So I get the idea. It's like it's a very sentimental piece to her. Ethel had wanted to be able to play this melancholy piece with her own two hands, to bring this ethereal, haunting music into the world with her of her own volition. Also can agree with that. I don't know, something about bringing something haunting but like controlled into the world is very nice. For many years, Ethel had attended her violin lessons dutifully, and for a while, she had accomplished her goal. She had performed this piece often enough that her muscle memory could make up for her lack of practice. That's really cool. But though Ethel knew she had the notes mostly correct wasn't good enough. Ah, okay. So she doesn't feel like she's doing the piece justice. I see. Ethel's right hand slipped, the bow scraping unpleasantly against the strings, and she winced. She'd been at it for some 5 minutes, trying to recreate her past successes, but this was the final straw. Okay, so my guesses are either, one, she has, like, the reason why she hasn't picked up her violin in a while is because she had some sort of injury. Maybe not related to the violin, but definitely related to, like, one of her hands. And so now she's trying to regain, like, that muscle strength to be able to play again. Or there was something emotionally traumatic that happened, and she just needed a moment away from, like, everything, and now she's trying to come back into it. I think injury is more likely, but we'll see. What was the point of pursuing in this any further? Dead Parent? Could definitely be Dead Parent. She said, that this piece is one of her favorites, and it was made when Mozart's mother died, so it's possible that she's playing, like, trying to perfect it again because, like, her mother died, question mark? Also, hello, Skinner. It wasn't as though she was performing this for an audience. She was at home, on her own, and this was a blessing. If her parents... Okay, never mind, both parents are alive. If her parents and two younger brothers had been there, Ethel wouldn't have been able to play her once-beloved violin at all. Ooh, okay, we're going into emotional trauma. They all would have told her to knock it off. Apart from Rowan, maybe. Okay, so big family, everyone's got something going on, kind of focused on themselves, don't want one of the siblings making too much noise. I lived in a house with, like, 3 siblings. I can relate to this. Rowan had always been kind. Oh, whoops, hang on. Back. Or maybe he, unlike the other members of Ethel's family, was simply too self-conscious to say what he actually thought. Maybe Rowan looked down on Ethel too, for her strange, lonely, old-fashioned hobbies. Also strange and lonely, bro. I used to hand make plushies, which is why I made the Snoo plushie line. Now I get to make plushies again, but I used to make plushies, and I'd, like, cut up all of my old stockings that had holes in them, and use them for stuffing. It was really something. Ethel's family didn't care for classical music. Her father, Jude, liked Iron Maiden, Dio, and Judas Priest, while her mother, Lauren, listened to anything that was trending on TikTok. Okay, so we are in current day. Honestly, I thought it was medieval times because of the violin, but, you know, that's on me for assuming. Violin is a modern instrument. Manny, meanwhile, listened to loud, shouty music, and Ethel didn't know what Rowan liked because he never told anybody. Rowan was very secretive about his interests. Most furtive, I think is how you say that. If her family had listened to classical music, however, Ethel knew they would have preferred Mozart to Beethoven and Chopin. Mozart seemed like exactly the sort of person Lauren would have enjoyed chatting to over a pint, come to think of it. If the Mozart in Amadeus was at all like the real man. I'm assuming that's a movie. Ethel sighed. She was disappointed in herself. I think the reason I also thought this was like an older timey period piece was the fact that her name is Ethel. Ethel gives me like old soul type energy. She hadn't been playing her violin for very long, but her jaw was aching and her fingers were already beginning to hurt. Oh, she's got a "Where's My Wife" jacket! Guys, lesbian "Where's My Wife" jacket. Hell yeah. Get in here with James Sunderland and the girl from Signalis and Alan Wake, and get in there with all of them, girly. Gloomily, she set down her violin. Glumly, she looked at it, lying on her bed. Her eyes softened in such a way that she looked rather like an abandoned puppy. Oh, baby. Then, feeling rather sad and sorry for herself, she sniffed. She had loved that violin once, but her love had long since dwindled. Everything Ethel, which had once brought Ethel joy, had become grey and faded since Clementine had left her. Ooh, I'm assuming Clementine is ex-girlfriend. Also, I don't know if English is the developer's first language, which I'm not saying as like a diss. I'm saying like that combined with my dyslexia, I'm probably gonna like stumble on a couple of things. What did her love for music matter now? Had it ever mattered? Ethel was already 21, and simultaneously, she was only 21. Oh god, I know that feeling. I know that feeling. The feeling of already and also only being the age that you are. Yup. Oh, girly. She was in her final year of university. The adult world loomed before her. Rather than welcoming it, however, Ethel found herself shrinking away from her future responsibilities. I'm 26 and terrified. Oh no, Skinner. I'm already and only 25, so it's like, I'll be 27 next year. Skinner, you might want to sit down for this. You know what comes after 27? 28. You're closer to being 30 than you are to being 20. I'm really sorry, Skinner. Not me fear-mongering my Well, yeah. And if it makes you feel any better, because we've passed my birthday by a couple of months, I'm closer to 50 than I am, like, to when I was born. That's, like, fucking insane, dude. That was probably why she dug out her old violin, to play through her favorite piece from her childhood. She had been trying to cling to the past. She simply didn't want to grow up. This reminds me of one of my siblings. Yeah, like, because one of my siblings is 17, they're turning 18 next year, and they're turning 18, but whenever you talk to them, it feels like you're talking to a 12-year-old. And I'm willing to bet that some of it is due to undiagnosed neurodivergence, just because of how my sibling reacts to things and how they talk. But I'm also willing to bet that the other part of it is them, like, digging their heels in a little bit. Which I think is a normal thing for most kids. It doesn't happen to all kids, but I think it's normal. Quarter of a century. Feel like throwing up. Oh no, Skinner, no. It's okay. You're okay. Everything's fine. Ethel sat down on her bed, defeated. Though she supposed it wasn't her bed anymore. It hadn't been for almost 3 years. When Ethel was at university in Durham, Manny slept in what had once been her room. When Ethel came back for the holidays, Manny and Rowan were forced to share a room, something they both resented. That's the exact situation that my siblings would be in, if not for the fact that I refuse to sleep in my siblings' bed, and I would rather take an air mattress than sleep on whatever they're sleeping on. I don't know why. I don't think it's a germaphobe thing or anything. It's just if someone else has slept in that bed for, like, extended periods of time, like, because it's their bed, I just do not want to get in their bed. And then also, if someone sleeps in my bed, which I'm fine with, I'm happy to share my bed, but if someone sleeps in my bed for like longer than 3 nights in a row, I have to change the sheets once they leave before I can sleep in my bed. I don't know what it is. I just don't like sleeping in other people's beds. Except for my partner's bed. I know it's a tight squeeze, Jude always said, but try to bear with it. Ethel can't be expected to share with either of you. She's the oldest, and she's a young lady. She needs her space, so don't be surly. Roland was good-natured enough that he didn't complain about this sleeping arrangement too much, not to Ethel's face at least, but Manny was less so. Manny was only 13, and he hadn't learned how to be tactful yet. Oh, that's pretty funny. I'm sorry, he hadn't learned how to be tactful yet. Yeah, Ethel's youngest brother had been in an awful mood all Christmas, a mood which Ethel knew was largely because of her unwanted presence. It had been a relief when her family had left the day prior for Luton Airport for the holiday they'd been looking forward to so much. Now that Manny was no longer I think it's supposed to be sulking. Now that Manny was no longer sulking around, shooting her nasty glares whenever their paths crossed, Ethel felt like she could finally breathe. Bro, why does this 13-year-old boy have beef with his 21-year-old sister? Is he literally glaring at her and actively sulking around the house just because he has to share a room with his brother for a few days? Like, I know if I did that to my sibling, if my parents didn't have, like, the blow-up mattress or whatever, and I had to sleep in my siblings' bed so that, and they shared a room, I know for a fact that neither of them would be happy, but I also know that neither of them would inherently blame me for it. They wouldn't be like, oh my god, it's your fault, we're forced to share a space. It would be, oh, this sucks, I have to share a space, but at least my sister's here. You know what I mean? Some small part of Ethel wished that she'd accompanied her family. She'd never been to Australia! Let's go! Ethel's family's in Australia. Hell yeah, represent. I promise the animals will not kill your family. At least, not all of them. Alright, sorry, I got a bit excited there. She'd never been to Australia before, but she was curious about it. But another part of her thought she made the right move. Fucking... I don't know why, I just saw the word Australia and I was like, hell yeah, let's fucking go. She didn't want to keep subjecting Manny to her company. She also enjoyed having the house to herself. That meant she could play the violin without having to worry about the sound carrying, and it did carry, through her parents' home, since the walls were so thin. There we go. Ethel had been looking forward to bringing her own, but now that she was on her... Ethel had been looking forward to being on her own, but now that she was on her own, she couldn't even enjoy her newfound freedom. What was wrong with her? Ethel bit the inside of her cheek, weighing up her options. I hate biting the inside of my cheek. It is almost always an inconvenience, and I don't understand how people stress bite their inner cheek. But to be fair, sometimes I stress bite my tongue, so, you know. If she couldn't play her violin, she should at least give her thesis a go. The due date to hand the damn thing in was approaching. She only had 2 months left to work on it, but she'd still not written a single line of it yet. Ooh, I wonder what her thesis is. She couldn't bring herself to. Like the violin, Ethel had lost all interest in her thesis and in her degree. What are you studying, girlie? Ethel had used her thesis as an excuse to get out of going on holiday with her parents. She told them she needed to focus on her work, but she'd been doing precious little work all day and wasting an awful lot of time. Ethel glanced at her violin, which lay discarded on her bed. Then, she sighed for the upteenth time that night. How had things come to this? What had happened to make her lose interest in everything which had once delighted her, especially her beloved violin? Well, I mean, she already answered that question. She said that she lost interest in a lot of things once Clementine left. Unwilling girls might have been coerced into playing instruments by their parents, but this hadn't been the case with Ethel. Ethel had been introduced to the world of classical music quite by chance, after discovering an old CD full of the stuff in a jumble sale for 50 pence. I wonder what country this is. She had been drawn to the old cracked CD because of the smiling lady on the cover. She hadn't been too interested in the music itself. When she had listened to that CD, however, she had experienced a revelation. The songs had spoken to her. She'd been instantly drawn into the world of classical music, and it had all been thanks to Mozart Violin Sonata No. 21. Ethel had known after listening to that CD that her life would never be the same again. I've never heard this Violin Sonata 21. I should probably listen to it after the stream, or like after I finish the game, just so that we can kind of get a glimpse into what it is that made Ethel fall in love with classical music so much. Shortly after, she had pleaded with her parents to take her to violin lessons so that she could play just as well as the smiley lady with the pixie cut on the cover of the CD. Ethel had since lost that life-altering CD. She'd lost many things which were important to her over the years, but she could remember the cover so clearly. The woman had been pretty despite her unconventional haircut, decidedly feminine in her blue wrapped dress and her dangly earrings. She had held her violin against the nook of her neck, and in her other hand she wielded a bow. There had been something commanding about the nameless woman in blue, despite how skinny she had been and how slender her arms and legs were. To the young Ethel, she had seemed less like a person and more of a queen from a fairy tale, the garland of flowers on her head only adding to this illusion. I wonder if this is like a real album cover that they're describing. It probably is, to be frank. Ethel hadn't necessarily wanted to play the violin for the sake of it. She had just wanted to look like the nameless lady on the album cover, a lady who, Ethel now realized, probably hadn't played any of the songs arranged on that CD. I mean, it's true. It's true, they probably just get a conventionally attractive thin woman to hold the violin in order to sell the CD. The woman on that cover had probably been a model brought into the studio to pose with a violin she couldn't play. There you go, that's exactly what I just said. That, or she had been a stock image lifted from the internet. When Ethel had grown up enough to realize this, it had sullied the mystique of the sentimental CD, a little like how other children felt betrayed after learning Santa wasn't real. It had been an eye-opening moment, but maybe it had been for the best. I actually have a story about the whole Santa isn't real thing. So when my grandfather was alive, we used to go to my grandparents for Christmas Eve, and then my grandparents on my mother's side for Christmas Day. And my sister and I and my two cousins kind of knew from the start that our grandfather was quote-unquote Santa coming in and giving us presents. I don't know how we figured it out, but we figured it out really, really young. Like, we figured it out before our parents could sit us down and tell us that Santa wasn't real. And so there was one time before Christmas, my mum brings my sister and myself into the room, tells us that Santa isn't real. We're both like, oh, we know. And then she tells us to not ruin it for my two younger siblings, right? Because they still thought Santa was real. And we were like, of course not. No, why would we tell them Santa's not real? They're literally only 2 and 3 years old. And so we had to refer to our grandfather as Santa when he was in the Santa outfit. And then we go to my grandparents' house. My grandfather dresses up as Santa. He's giving out all of the presents. And he gives a present to my mum. And my mum looks at him, smiles, and says, "Thank you, Grandpa." To which my sister, who was maybe like 5, like really aggressively elbowed her and goes, "You mean thank you, Santa?" And I just thought it was the funniest shit. It was a really good story. I have a lot of sentimental connections to like Christmas, specifically stuff that my sister pulled off. It's really funny. This revelation had lessened Ethel's pain, at least, when the CD had gone missing a few years ago. In any case, Ethel's violin lessons had never quite lived up to her expectations. Sorry. Ethel had kept the violin carried by her initial childish enthusiasm, but her enthusiasm had faded when she started secondary school and realized that she would never be as smiley or as happy as the elven woman on that CD cover. She would never be that pretty either. Aw, that's not true, Ethel. I mean, I don't have a picture of the woman, but I'm sure it's not true. No amount of playing the violin could bring Ethel closer to her idealized image of perfection, something which became all the more apparent when Shania and her gang started to bully her. Oh great, we're dealing with bullying now. Ethel grew so disenchanted with the violin she gave up on her lessons at the start of the year 11. She went through all of middle school being bullied and she didn't give up until the 11th grade. I mean, honestly, that sounds kind of like a win. Good for her. For, like, keeping with it for so long. She had needed to focus on her GCSEs anyway. Okay, so I can figure out what country she's from with that information. GCSE. Okay, she's somewhere in the UK area. Fair enough, fair enough, fair enough. She needed to focus on her GCSEs anyway, and it hadn't helped that she had jammed her fingers during a netball game in PE, and it had hurt for a whole month to hold her bow. Jude had never liked it when she played in the house anyway, especially when there was a big game on. Manny, meanwhile, had always said her scraping sounded unbearable. Man, fucking, can we, I know he's 13, but can we, like, punish this kid? Like, honestly, at 13, you should know not to say shit like that. It's like nails on a chalkboard, can't you pack it in? Manny used to say, and in the end, Ethel did just that. Yeah, this kid, I'm sorry, 13 is old enough to know you should not be saying shit like that. She packed the violin in, but not for good. She continued to play here and there when her parents and her brothers were out of the house and where nobody could hear her. Sometimes, Ethel even took joy in her playing, but these moments had been few and far between. Once Ethel had played the violin dedicatedly, once a week at her teacher's, Miss Manderly's. Manderly's? Now she played once a month, if that, and she did so furtively I think is it, as if it was shameful secret. Ethel couldn't help but feel embarrassed as she played, as though she were performing an obscene act even more intimate than... Okay, that is not the... Okay. I get the sentiment, I get the vibes. Maybe playing the violin was, oh god, in a sense, because it had only ever brought her pleasure. That is not quite... That's... I get the shameful side of it. I don't think we should be comparing... This is talking to Ethel, not the game dev. Comparing something as harmless and innocent that brings you joy to, like, a sexual act is kind of weird, because there are different degrees of feeling joy, right? Like, there are some people that don't even get sexual gratification from sexual acts. They just do it because it feels nice in general. It's not a sexual thing. It's very odd. But yeah, just because you're the only one who seeks joy in it doesn't, yeah, weird. Get a sensor bar ready just in case. I don't think there's any lewd stuff in this game, but I think I still have the sensor bar from Changed ready to go, I think. Nobody else in her life had cared to listen to her. Nobody except dear old Miss Manderly. She had been encouraging, but what had this brought Ethel? Ethel left her violin on the bed and approached the window, her footsteps muffled like a cat's quiet padding. Once there, she stood at the sill and glanced out at the garden beyond. It was late at night. The digital clock on her bedside table said it was already 8:30, and the sky was navy blue, the moon rigged by wisps of cloud. Ringed, not rigged. We're not rigging the moon. There was a bit of a breeze outside, and the darkened silhouettes of the hedgerows were shaking. Ethel's fingers curled around the windowsill. All of a sudden, being inside felt stifling. Ethel had been so caught up in her memories that she had worried they would overwhelm her. Newly uneasy, Ethel took an anxious step away from the window. She wasn't sure why, but she had an intense desire to escape. She had to clear the cobwebs from her mind in some way, and what better way than to go for a walk? This might have been late at night. It was too late to go for a wander, really. But she did live in Oxbury. Okay, so they do just straight up tell us where she lives. Oxbury was a tiny village, almost minuscule, really, with a nigh to non-existent crime rate. Nothing bad ever happened there. No stabbing ever took place in Oxbury, contrary to the wild claims Americans on the internet like to make about the UK's crime statistics. Okay, no, we're not gonna do that, because the knife crime in the UK actually is atrocious. Just because it didn't happen in Oxbury doesn't mean that the UK doesn't have a serious knife crime issue. We're not gonna do that. Ethel would be fine. Why wouldn't she be? Oxbury was so safe and sterile, it bordered on being boring. Hadn't she always wanted to go on fun adventures when she was a little girl? Adventure was hardly going to come find her if she remained indoors, stepped in her reminiscences as if she were a teabag. Steeped, that's why I can't fucking read. Ethel didn't imagine that anything exciting would happen on her walk, but it would be better than sitting inside and stewing. Ethel padded downstairs, her feet sinking against the cushioned landing, then the cushioned steps of the staircase, and paused by the front door. She eyed her old coat, but ultimately left it be. It was a brown duffel coat, which Ethel had owned since sixth form. I don't know what that means. Like 6th grade? The coat had been in active service for 4 long winters, and the passage of time had taken its toll. One of the toggles of the coat was missing, it had snapped clean off, and the brown furry fabric was worn and threadbare in places, like a beloved teddy which had been cuddled one too many times. Lauren had tutted when Ethel had come home from university, clad in that natty coat, and shaken her head. "You're still wearing that old thing?" she asked, her voice incredulous. I thought you would have brought a new coat by now. You look like you've come straight out of a jumbo sale." Hey, I still have jackets and clothes and stuff from when I was, like, in the 8th grade, okay? Sorry, a little over 10 years, 11, 12 years. Ethel knew that her mother hadn't meant this as a compliment. Ethel's mother rarely complimented her appearance, but she had liked it nonetheless. Lauren had often taken Ethel to jumble sales when she was a girl, ostensibly to find some cheap bits and pieces for their newly renovated kitchen, but actually so they could have a natter with her friends. Lauren would stand by Auntie Jeannie and Auntie Mariella's stalls. They weren't really aunties, of course, they were just other mothers, like her mother's friends, while Ethel would wander around by herself, transfixed by all the wares on display. The jumble sale her mother had frequented every weekend had taken place in a car park of the big Sainsbury in Wrexham, I think is how that's said. And all sorts of people were in attendance. It hadn't just been Auntie Jeannie who sold old paperbacks, which had once belonged to her mother, and Auntie Mariella who sold soap and candles. There had been other, more interesting vendors with piercings and tattoos. Some of these vendors sold bits of wood whittled into fantasy creatures, self-painted dioramas of forests and fairy tale castles, handmade jewelry sets with stones that could have been as that could have been precious, but which shone regardless, and beaded dream catchers which swayed in the breeze. Oh, so it's like a craft market type thing. Okay. Their wares made Auntie Jeannie's old paperbacks and Auntie Mariella's soaps and candles look very pedestrian indeed. Ethel had always loved jumble sales, in part because there had been so much stuff to grab at. They'd been so busy, Ethel had been able to melt into the crowds completely anonymous. Ethel had quite liked being told she looked like she had come straight from one of those sales, though her mother had been less impressed. Hang on guys, 1 second. Alright, chat, we're back. Lauren had told her that her coat could make her look mousy, but that was what Ethel preferred. She never liked standing out. Maybe that was why she'd chosen to venture outdoors at such a late hour. There wouldn't be anybody on the street to spot her. The coat really was too ratty to keep wearing, however. Ethel left it be, reasoning her jacket would be enough. Ethel did grab her father's old torch from his toolbox, however, just in case she needed it. She stuffed it inside a canvas bag, which she slung over her shoulder. Then, she stepped out onto the street. She shut the front door behind her and soon was enveloped by the shadows. She hoped she would be able to wander the streets uninterrupted. Ooh. I don't know if this is a man or a woman, so we're just gonna read it, I suppose. Well now, this is a coincidence. It's been a while. Ethel, isn't it? But her hopes were soon scuppered. Oh, it's a man. There was a man on the other side of the road. A man who looked almost as washed out as Ethel. It was hard to see in the dark, even with the street lamps illuminating the grey, gloomy pavement, but Ethel recognized the man well enough. He must have been in his 50s now, but he'd been younger when Ethel had first met him. 31, 32, she wasn't quite sure. He had a lined face which spoke of his encroaching, I'm sorry guys. Can't read. Though it was lined in such a way that traces of the young man had once been could still be seen. His jaw was still firm, his nose aquiline, and his eyes were striking. Oh my god, hi Minty, how you doing? Welcome in. Is that a Giga Chad? I have to have a look, because it kind of looks like a Giga Chad, but my immediate thought was that fucking Undertale song, driving in my car. You know, the face they do? That's what I thought of. It is? Okay, fantastic. Hello, how you doing? The man had a full head of hair despite his age, and it was more sandy brown than grey, shot through with only a few lighter strands. He wasn't a bad-looking man, he was definitely no monster, but Ethel still shrunk away from him. Can't sleep, so here you are. Oh, okay, fair enough. Maybe the dark lesbian romance will put you to sleep. She knew him, but that did little to endear her to him. This was Mr. Brown, one of Ethel's teachers back in primary school. Mr. Brown had been one of the few male teachers at Oxbury Primary. In fact, he might have been the only male teacher. Sorry, I heard a sound and it scared me. The best kind of story, exactly the best. He stood out from the rest, not because of his gender, but because of his sheer size. He had been a mountain of a man, so much so that he had to stoop to enter and exit the classroom. He had been head and shoulders above Miss Pierce, Miss Spriggett, and Miss Moyles, quite literally. Ethel had always found Mr. Brown intimidating, but with his sheer vastness, not to mention his voice, which had been quite deep and booming. Ethel, granted, had been a good deal shorter herself back when she had been in primary school, but Mr. Brown didn't look any less intimidating over a decade later. Actually, this reminds me, when one of my brothers was in the 6th grade, he was doing his, like, 6th grade formal, right? And I moved around grade schools a couple of times as a kid. I went to, I think, 3 different grade schools. And the grade school that my brother was in not only was not any of the grade schools that I went to, but it was also, like, a good maybe 30-40 minute drive from the schools I used to go to and where we used to live. So imagine my shock when I show up with my family to drop off my brother for his school formal, right? The families were welcomed in for a little while, so we all hopped in the room. And my 4th grade teacher is in the room where my brother is having his 6th grade, like, graduation. Now, keep in mind, the age gap between me and my brother is, I believe, it's not quite 10 years. It's, oh god, I'm 25 and he's 18, so we're about 7 years apart, right? But then add another 2 years because I knew this teacher in 4th grade and he was teaching my brother in 6th grade. It had been 9 years since I saw this man, and he immediately was like, "Oh my god, Sylv, how you doing? Blah, 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 blah." And it was so, I don't have the word for it. Surreal, I suppose. Anyway, sorry. Ethel had grown while Mr. Brown had not, but he still eclipsed her. Sorry, I keep hearing noises and my ear is fucking up, and I think it might be because there's water in it and it really bothers me. Alright, I think we're good for now. Mr. Brown was taller than Rowan, who had shot up when he started secondary school. Taller too than her father, who had played basketball when he was younger. He was easily taller than 6 feet. He could have even been pushing 7. Mr. Brown was a vast mountain of a man with large hands and large feet, whose coat seemed too small to contain him. Ethel had been afraid of Mr. Brown as a young girl, and little had changed. She was still afraid of him. Ethel shrunk back, shaking. What was Mr. Brown doing outside so very late? I mean, we could say the same about you, Ethel. It was strange, but... Oh, there's a dog, okay. Oh. That had explained it. He must have been walking his dog. Mr. Brown's dog was a curious sight. It was the polar opposite of its owner, small and runty where Mr. Brown was tall and wide. The dog and the owner were so mismatched it was almost comical. The diminutive dog, was it a spaniel? Ethel wasn't sure. Was so tiny that Ethel worried Mr. Brown might step on it by accident. Jesus. Ethel hadn't known that Mr. Brown had a dog. She didn't know much about Mr. Brown at all. She hadn't thought about him in years. Was the spaniel? Yes, Ethel was sure it was a spaniel. A new addition to his family? Well, whatever, it didn't really matter. Ethel? Ethel's shocked silence must have perturbed Mr. Brown because he sounded concerned when he said, "You are Ethel, aren't you? Ethel Briggs? It's been a while since I saw you, but I remember you. I don't forget my students." "Oh, yes, I'm Ethel. Sorry." "I thought as much. It's nice to know I'm not going completely senile." "I take it you're back home from university then?" "Oh, yes." "You're going to Durham?" "Oh my god, Saku, hello! How you doing, baby girl? Welcome in!" Saku, you're gonna love this. It's dark romance lesbians. We're so excited. We haven't got to the lesbian part, but we're getting there. We're getting there. Yes, did my parents tell you that? Aye, they did. Jude told me. Oh, do you see my parents very much then? Oh, aye. Oh, okay, this one's Irish. Love me some gays. Me too, man. I just love me some good gays, okay? It's... you know what I mean? Like a good... So this guy's Irish. I can't do an Irish accent, I'm sorry. I can tell because the... Oh, hi. We go to the pub quiz together sometimes in Wrexham. Your father can be very competitive. Ethel didn't disbelieve that. Jude had always been a bit of a know-it-all. He was the sort of man who liked to watch quiz shows solely so he could yell at the contestants for getting things wrong. And woe betide? I don't know what that means. They, loused up any questions on classic rock. It was Jude's specialty. Ethel couldn't imagine her mother joining in the pub quiz at all that enthusiastically, but she probably went along for the drinks and the peanuts. Ethel had been to the pub in Wrexham with her parents a couple of times, and Lauren got on rather well with the proprietor, old Jerry. He always made a show of IDing Lauren whenever she ordered a pint, though it wasn't really necessary. Aw, come on, let an old bird have some fun, Ethel. Guys, oh my god, speaking of IDs, right? So, if you look under 25, they're supposed to ID you, at least in Australia, because the legal drinking age is 18, but if you look under 25, they have to ID you, right? I have been ID'd basically my entire life, with the exception of times that I'm with my partner, because I guess walking around with my partner aged me. But now that I am 25, I guess I look 25 or older because people have stopped asking me for my ID. And you know what? It does feel kind of sad. It does feel kind of sad, okay? Like, let an old bird have fun. Lauren might have been young for a mother of 3, and she took great pains to ensure her makeup was just so, but she was in her early 42. It was impossible that anybody might mistake her for a teenager, but Lauren still liked the attention. She thrived on it. I got ID'd for wanting to buy Call of Duty? What? What? That's fucking nuts, dude. I remember I had to, when I was a kid, I had to bring my parents to EB Games, so that they could be with me when I bought Bayonetta 1 and 2, the package deal for the Wii U, because, yeah, I think I was too young for it. I think it's 16 plus, MA 15 plus in Australia. I think I was 14. I don't remember. I was like 21 at the time. Oh no, Saku. I mean, Saku, I say take it as a compliment, you know? You've still got it. Oh. I've been seeing quite a bit of your parents, actually. After Evie's funeral, your mum helped me with the arrangements and with all the refreshments. Her help was invaluable. Ah, now that sounded familiar. Ethel thought her mother might have mentioned that at some point or another. Her old primary school teacher's wife had died recently. She hadn't given it much thought, but she supposed her mother must have been talking about Mr. Brown. She was the only male teacher she had had, and Ethel didn't think that Miss Pierce, Miss Spriggett, or Miss Moyles had been having any clandestine lesbian affairs on the sly. What? They're all too old-fashioned. Okay. First of all, fuck you. Second of all, I'm gonna get my cup of tea because my ear is really fucking me and I need to distract myself from picking at my ear because my ear is really uncomfortable. Oh, it's tea time. Good stuff. It's still warm. Ethel wondered briefly if Mr. Brown expected her to comment on his wife's passing, but she was spared the need when he continued once more, readjusting the grip on his dog's lead. I've been curious about you too. You were one of my better students, even among the other Year 5 kiddos, so I ask about you sometimes. I hope you don't mind. Ethel did mind, as a... Sorry. It's like, I hope you don't mind. It's like, actually, she did mind. It just got me. She didn't like being spoken about behind her back, even if the talk was all positive. She didn't know how to articulate this, however, without sounding rude. Okay, hang on. I think the phrase talking behind your back is exclusively talking about negative things, right? Because when someone says something positive or even neutral about you to someone else, it doesn't really... How do I put into words what I'm saying? The phrase talking behind your back inherently implies that the thing people are saying about you are negative. I don't know. It just kind of got me that she would say someone asking how she is to her parents is back talk. I remember like 2 years ago, I thought I was, though I was in high school, they asked me if I'm almost done with high school. Like, man. Girly pop. I feel like, okay, so throughout high school and through university, I had a lot of people who, like, didn't know me, assuming that I was either, like, freshly 18 or underage. And then, like, the second I hit 25, like, all of that disappeared, you know what I mean? I think it's really funny. You're 24 and in uni? Oh, yeah. I was gonna ask you how old you were, actually, because the last time you hopped in my chat, you said that you might have been a bit late, but you're in uni. And to me, a bit late is, like, mid-30s, maybe. So I was really curious how old you were. But 20... Oh, you're 26 now. Okay, that's not too bad. I'm 25. Alright, anyway. Stuck for words, Ethel looked at her feet and said, "Oh, no, it's fine. Your parents are quite proud of you, you know. They can't stop boasting about you." Oh, that's so cute. Ethel thought that this was highly unlike... Ethel, like, I get the vibe. My dad and I are very awkward when we hang out together. It's really funny because my dad will say we butt heads a lot because we're too different, and then my mum will say we butt heads a lot because we're too alike. So my dad and I have a bit of a stunted, like, we struggle to communicate with each other, and when we're alone together for extended periods, 9 times out of 10 it ends in a fight. But if someone comes to me and says that my dad's been talking very highly of me and the things that I've been up to, like, I'm believing them. Like, my dad and I have a very strange and, like, kind of difficult to get on the same level kind of relationship, but I know how highly he thinks of me and what I do, which I'm imagining him sitting down and watching me play this lesbian game, like, are you still proud of me, Dad? Probably not. Anyway. My parents talking highly of me? Crazy. Nah, my parents, my Hispanic parents would never. Well, see, my dad is Hispanic. I think Hispanic is the right term. We're South American on my dad's side. My grandparents came from Uruguay to Australia. So on my dad's side, I'm like a third-generation immigrant. I had to count because I couldn't remember if my dad was born in Australia or Uruguay. So I'm a third-generation immigrant on my dad's side. And yeah, my grandmother, before she passed, my Uruguayan grandmother was always like, don't sit down and marry and have kids. You're so young. You're so young. Travel the world. Go start your business. Do whatever you need to do. And yeah, my dad was very like that too. It's like, if you have your own vision, you have your own business idea, you have your own this, you fucking go for it. My dad, despite all of our, like, disagreements and stuff, has always been my biggest cheerleader. Aside from maybe my boyfriend now. She might have gotten into a good university, and maybe she was doing well academically, but her parents had never placed much stock into highfalutin? I don't know what that means. My mom's the opposite. She's like, girl, when are you getting a boyfriend so you can give me grandchildren? My mother has come to terms with the fact that she will most likely not be getting grandchildren from me. She has one grandchild in the form of my cat, but I think eventually my mom realized that that kind of talk is not gonna quite work on me, and she's waiting for my sister now. She's got my sister, my brother, and my youngest sibling. Like, she's got options. She's not waiting on me. Neither of her parents had been to university. Jude had joined the workforce as soon as he'd been able. He apprenticed as a plumber, and Lauren hadn't even finished secondary school. She packed in school altogether when she was 15, so she could pursue her dreams of superstardom. Actually, I'm also the first person in my family to go to university. I remember I found out at my cousin's communion, and I felt really bad at the time because the celebration dinner that was supposed to be celebrating my cousin's communion very quickly turned into a celebration dinner about me getting into university because the whole family was there when I found out. Keep telling her I don't want to. I'm fine with my cat and dog, but she keeps pushing it. You know what you do? You tell her you are a lesbian. You tell her you are lesbian, and then she won't bother you ever again. Or, because she's Hispanic, she might have an issue with that. But I don't know. My South American family was very open to the idea that any of their grandchildren or children could be gay. Sorry, Mum, I have a wife. Exactly. And if you need someone to show up and pretend to be your wife so that your mum gets off your back, just, like, hit me up, okay? I'm very good at pretending to be people's wives. Kick me out. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry that you are in an environment where you are not allowed to be gay if that is your choice. I shouldn't laugh. I shouldn't laugh because it's actually a very serious and very upsetting thing, but like, oh my goodness, I just wasn't expecting that. Alright. Unfortunately for Lauren, however, these dreams hadn't come into fruition. She had done some modeling for trashy tabloids for a few years before debuting as an actress in a few sleazy, low-budget flicks Ethel had never wanted to see. I have a boyfriend, but she also wouldn't love him. Well, good thing he's not her boyfriend then, huh? Just saying. Just saying, she doesn't need to love him. It's not her boyfriend. Lauren had wound up settling down and starting a family with Jude when she was only 21, her age. Ethel thought with a shiver, though she had never seemed particularly bitter. Yeah, my mum doesn't, at least at first, wasn't super keen on the idea of my boyfriend because my boyfriend is 10 years my senior. We met at university. We were both studying, he was studying game design and I was studying like interactive media. But she's grown on him quite a lot. Because in the time that we've known each other, he has done a lot to, like, kind of take care of me and be there for me. And so my mum's warmed up to him a lot. She's gonna kick me out as well if I tell her. Oh, so she doesn't know you have a boyfriend. Also, this idea here of, like, Ethel being like, oh my god, at my age, my mum was married and, like, starting a family. Girl, honey, at 25, which is my age, my mother, if I'm doing the math correctly, was pregnant with her 4th child. Because she had me literally 2 weeks before her 19th birthday. So she was 18. And then my sister came 4 years after that, which is, I believe, 22. And then, oh no, she would have been pregnant with her 3rd child because there's a 3-year age gap between my sister and my brother. So my mum would be currently pregnant with her 3rd child. Actually, no. I'm thinking of the months now. No, she would have had my brother. And then, yeah, she'd be in that weird 1 year between my brother and my youngest sibling. Which is really weird to think about. Secretive dating? Hello there. Yes, secretive dating. My mum wants me to date cute white guy. My boyfriend isn't. I love the internalized racism that's happening here with your mother. I hope she eventually comes to love whoever it is you end up with, but oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. You know what it reminds me of? It reminds me, in Japanese culture, there are a lot of Asian women who are currently trying to get with white men, not even to date them. Literally, they'll approach these white men and they'll be like, we don't even have to date, we don't even have to stay together, just get me pregnant. And they do that because a lot of the facial features and like the genetic mixing of Asian and white ends up with a lot of desirable traits, in particular the wider eyes. And yeah, it's contributing to the Asian men loneliness situation, because the women that do want to have kids with white men. It's wild. That's what your story reminds me of. Lauren had never taken much of an interest in her daughter's creative or academic pursuits, though she'd not been dismissive of them either. Lauren had driven Ethel all the way to Wrexham once a week for her violin lessons with Miss Manderley, lessons she had paid for without complaining. She had seemed pleased, too, when Ethel had been accepted into her university of choice, though her pleasure had been much more effusive than a benign, "Oh, that's nice, dear. I suppose we'll have to get your student grant sorted out then, eh?" Man, I'm in so much debt from uni. My boyfriend is Asian, so his parents are kind of the same. I don't think they want me dating him because I'm Hispanic. I just think, like, guys, I know that the parents are, like, old souls from, like, other, like, generations, but, like, the birth rate worldwide is so low, and I don't think it's an issue personally, but society as a whole is trying to make you think it's an issue, and if they really are that concerned with like, the dwindling population, then can they really afford to be picky? You know what I mean? I'm just putting that out there. Like, you can't be picky and forceful, you know what I mean? Although, to be fair, I do think, like, in your case, Saku, I think Hispanic Asian baby would be a very cute mix. Ugh. Yeah, I know, right? Exactly. Ethel found it hard to believe that her mother had been boasting about her academically talented daughter. Yeah, I found it hard to believe when my mother was boasting about my creative endeavors, but I caught her doing it in 4K, and it made me really happy. That's what I'm saying. You want them mixed babies? Oh, shit, man. See, I'm part Italian, part Uruguayan. I got that mix in me. And for some reason, that blend makes everybody think that I'm Greek. Because when I was a baby, I was really dark, but as I've gotten older, I've become, like, white passing. And white people just look at me and they go, oh yeah, another white person. But South Americans, Italians, and Greeks will all look at me and be like, I know what you are. And then they assume I'm Greek, which I'm not. I don't want children, but if I ever did, they'd be so cute. They would be. Lauren would have been more inclined to boast if Ethel had started to dress more fashionably, or if she learned how to apply eyeliner without making her eyes water, or if she had started her own successful TikTok channel. Lauren had a TikTok account of her own, where she filmed herself putting on makeup, taking off makeup, showing off her nails, and singing along to other favorite pop songs. Lauren was actually fairly successful on the platform. She had managed to rack up over 300,000 followers in the span of 2 years. If that was YouTube, that would be insane growth. On TikTok, that's not actually that great. TikTok growth rates are ridiculous. She sometimes did sponsorships with makeup brands, and it was her newfound fame which had paid for Manny's fancy gaming PC, Dude's new guitar, and the family's holiday in Australia. Let's go! If Ethel had been like Lauren, bouncy and cheerful, Ethel imagined her mother might have been more inclined to boast about her. But, as it was, Ethel thought it was doubtful. It wasn't hard to imagine that Mr. Brown cared about Ethel's academic achievements more than her own parents did. Still, it was kind of him, Ethel supposed, to bother spinning her a white lie like that. Question? Answer. Let's go. She must have been trying to cheer her up. Oh, I'm sorry, where are my manners? You'll be on your Christmas holidays now, won't you? I doubt you'll want to talk about university much right now. Oh, not really. Are you free Friday night for a game stream? Saku, I think that's hilarious because my fucking ADHD brain made me forget, but I was supposed to text you today asking if you would be free to do a gaming stream in the next couple of days. I'm going to... What time zone are you in? You speak a lot of beautiful Spanish and you are Hispanic, so I'm assuming that you're somewhere in a South American time zone. Because I usually do my art streams on Friday, but I can make an exception just for you. Just for you, my little girly. PST, okay. So... I'm looking at it literally right now. Oh, California. Nice, 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 nice. Alright, let's see. What time do you usually stream? Because I normally stream... Actually, let me do it this way. There's a Discord... Like, there's a website called Hammer Time, one word. And it lets you put in, like, a date and time. And the date and time I put in will show in my time zone for me, but it will show in your time zone for you. That's kind of, like, my standard at the moment. So I'm gonna send you a timestamp. That's usually the time that I stream on Fridays. And you just let me know. I would have started an hour or two ago. Perfect. Perfect. Because, yeah, an hour or two ago is when I start streaming. That works out. You want to do Dead by Daylight? I have that one downloaded. I've never played Dead by Daylight. I thought as much. I'm sorry for bringing it up. I don't want to make you feel uncomfortable. The thought was appreciated, but Ethel thought it was rather too late for that. She already felt uncomfortable. That wasn't necessarily Mr. Brown's fault, however. She felt uncomfortable about most things in life. That's just how she was. I leave you on your merry way, but I am curious. What are you doing going out for a walk at this hour? Oh, hang on, back. It's very dark outside, and I think it might start raining soon. Are you sure you'll be alright? The time you sent is this time I usually start? Perfect. Perfect. Thank you, but I'll be fine. Are you sure? Ethel nodded. I have my phone with me, and I even brought my dad's old torch if it gets too dark. I should be able to light the way, but I won't be gone long. Sorry, my throat's starting to hurt. I just wanted to go looking for bats. Bats? Yes, in nightjars. Yes, and nightjars. My dad took me out to look for them sometimes when I was little. I know my way around the forest, so it should be fine. If you say so. Mr. Brown didn't look wholly reassured, but he didn't try to question Ethel further. Maybe he didn't have the time for it. His dog was beginning to tug on his lead, yipping fiercely as he did. Mr. Brown's dog might have been small, but he had quite the set of lungs on him, and it clearly wasn't afraid of using them. Oh my god, me? Tiny with a fucking massive set of lungs to scream at people? Ah, it looks like his lordship. It looks like his lordship here is getting hungry. I can't keep him waiting. Not if I don't want him to wake up half the blasted village. I should be off now. But do take care of yourself. I know you're great I know you're a great grown lass by now, but the woods can be perilous at night, even if you have a torch and you know your way. The woods are a lot bigger than they look. I wouldn't want you getting lost. And you do know what happens to the Daneley girl, don't you? Well, of course Ethel knew what happened to the Delaney girl, is how you say it. Everybody in Oxbury did. It had been quite the topic of conversation when it happened. Ethel hadn't been living in Oxbury then. She'd just started university in Durham, and she'd been trying desperately to keep her head above water, but Lauren had told her about it. Her mother had called her, breathless, to tell her that a girl had gone missing, and it wouldn't be the first time either. Don't you remember that clubby girl? You were still in primary school at the time, but that caused a stir too. I wonder if the cases are related. Ethel hadn't liked the way her mother talked about the girl's disappearance, as though it was some amusing piece of gossip, no different from who was dating who on Love Island. She found it rather tasteless. Ethel hadn't known the missing girl. She'd not been local to Oxbury. According to the local paper, she'd been staying for a few days with a couple of relatives, and she didn't remember her first name. She thought it had been something unusual, though. Something exotic. India, maybe? Indigo? Well, in any case, the girl had last been sighted near the edge of the woods by a dog walker. Ooh. Was Mr. Brown said dog walker? Because we're on the edge of the forest, and a dog walker has seen— ooh. The police had combed every inch of the forest, but her body had never been discovered, if there was a body to uncover at all. It was possible she'd grown bored of being stuck in Oxbury and she'd run away. There's no guarantee that she had come to a sticky end, and neither was there any evidence, but Ethel still wondered. And so, it seems, did Mr. Brown. It had been almost 3 years since the young Miss Delaney disappearance, but it had cast something of a pall over Oxbury. As a teacher, Mr. Brown must have been more concerned than most. He had spent the better part of his life looking after small children, cleanly skimmed knees and breaking up arguments over who stole whose favourite toy. Ethel could hardly fault Mr. Brown for worrying, but his concerns still rankled? There was something uncomfortably cloying about it. Did Mr. Brown still regard her as a child? Was that why he was lecturing her? Look, some adults will never be able to see children as adults when they grow up, if that makes sense. That, and it's very difficult to acknowledge someone has grown and changed when you have not been physically present in their life to see that growth and that change. So yeah, he probably is still treating you like a child. Ethel was 21 now, but she knew Mr. Brown would never regard her as an adult in her own right. How could he, when he had known her as a 9-year-old? Exactly what I was saying. This realization was an uncomfortable one. It made Ethel cringe. I'll be fine, really. I know my way around, and I have my phone. If I do get lost, I can call for help. Who Ethel would call if she got lost exactly was a mystery even to her. She could hardly call her parents, given they were in Australia! How many times are they gonna drop Australia? Like, hell yeah. She knew she wouldn't have the courage to call the police. Ethel would have hesitated to dial 999 even if her home had been broken into by a couple of machete-wielding muggers. She wouldn't have wanted to be a burden. Maybe Mr. Brown realized this. He had known Ethel for several years, but he chose, rather tactfully, to not comment on it. Instead, he just nodded and said, "Very good. Take care then, and make sure you come back before it rains, eh?" "Thank you. I'll see you later?" "I'm sure you will. If you need anything while your parents are away, remember, Sparky and I are just a few doors down." Sparky? Was that the name of Mr. Brown's dog? Sparky was the name of my shiny Shinx, back when I very first played Pokemon Platinum, my first shiny ever. Ethel supposed it must have been, though what a small dog like Sparky could possibly do to help her, or anybody for that matter, was a mystery. Ethel doubted she would have calls to call on Mr. Brown or on Sparky during the ensuing days, but she didn't say this. Instead, she just nodded and thanked Mr. Brown, who smiled in return. Good night then, Ethel. I hope you have luck finding your bats. I hope so too. Ethel hadn't had much luck during the last few months, not since the start of her 3rd and final year at university. She could have used a bit of good fortune. Mr. Brown gave Ethel a brief wave with the hand which wasn't occupied with Sparky's leash, and turned. Mr. Brown's footsteps faded away, as did the sounds of Sparky's... Sorry, I heard some glass clanking together. 1 second. Alright, we're back. Mr. Brown's footsteps faded away, as did the sound of Sparky's indignant yapping, though this took far longer to fade. For such a small dog, Sparky was awfully loud. Ethel watched for a few moments, motionless. Then she spun on her heels. It was time to go to the forest. Ethel began to walk through the village once more, picking her way through the latticework of shadows which were slowly lengthening on the ground. Her footfalls were dull on the pavement, a series of muted sounds which offered little competition when contrasted with the mournful moaning of the wind. It had been breezy when Ethel first stepped outdoors, but the wind was beginning to pick up now. It tugged at her braided hair and she shivered. She should have expected the poor weather, given this was very early January, but she was still surprised at how frigid it was. What was the temperature? It must have been in the single digits. Ethel looked up at the sky which hung above her, dark and mysterious. The clouds were grim, foreboding even, but they didn't look numerous enough to promise rain. Maybe Mr. Brown had been wrong about the weather? But Mr. Brown was a sensible man, and it seemed unlikely he would make a mistake even, or perhaps especially, about something as mundane as the weather. She would have to be quick about her walk if she didn't want to get drenched. She would step into the woods and make a neat circuit about the trees, and then after 15 minutes, she would head back. Yes, she would be fine. She wouldn't wander too far. What was the point? It wasn't like Oxbury's forest was all that exciting either. It was in a dreamlike manner that Ethel navigated the streets. As she did, the wind blew. It sounded sad, like a wounded animal. Maybe coming out here was a mistake after all. What was the point in coming all of the way out here anyway? There was nothing that Ethel really wanted to do in the woods. She was just trying to run away from the responsibilities, like she had after Clementine. But Ethel didn't want to think about that. It was with uncertain eyes that Ethel glanced about the dense woodland which surrounded her. In the distance, somewhere far above her head, an owl hooted. The sound split the air quite suddenly, and Ethel jumped. She hadn't expected it. She could feel her pulse hammering uncomfortably in the base of her neck. Ethel had been into the forest many, many times before. Sometimes with her parents and sometimes with her brothers, though more often than not on her own. But it felt different tonight. Maybe it was because of Mr. Brown's warning. The Delaney girl was on Ethel's mind. It felt almost as if she were watching her from the shadows, giggling at Ethel's unease. There was something disconcerting about the woods tonight. Something devouring. It seemed almost to be inviting her in, but beneath the cordiality, there lurked something uncompromising. When Ethel closed her eyes, she thought she could even hear the strange whispers upon the breeze. But surely that was silly. Nothing lived in the forest apart from rabbits, mice, and an old badger. There was nothing waiting in the woods for her. She was being stupid. Ethel took a deep breath. Then she stepped forward. The loose leaves strewn on the cold, hard ground crunched beneath her soles, and once again an owl hooted. This time, however, it didn't startle her. She was prepared for it. Ethel continued to tramp through the woods, her father's clunky torch in hand. It wasn't a very reliable source of light. It kept gutting in and out, but at least it had dual purpose. If push came to shove, and she was set upon by some miscreant, it was heavy enough that she could use it as a weapon. Ethel doubted anybody would attack her, however, despite Mr. Brown's warnings. She was in Oxbury, for goodness sake. There wasn't any sort of place where people were attacked. Hell, not even the missing Delaney girl had been attacked. She had simply disappeared. Besides, it wasn't like Ethel had anything on her that was worth stealing. Her phone was an old Samsung at least 6 generations out of date, so delightfully archaic in the current year that Clementine had laughed at her. She'd always joked that Ethel's phone belonged in a museum. Ethel hadn't bothered bringing her wallet with her either. There weren't any shops open this late. There was scarcely any shops in Oxbury at all, save for the corner shop owned by the Lilly family that closed at 6 o'clock. She'd already come, then passed, a long time ago. Now, it was almost 9 o'clock, and Ethel could feel it. The wind blew uncomfortably cold, trailing its invisible fingers against Ethel's cheeks. Mr. Brown had warned that it might rain, but it felt so cold snow was beginning to seem more likely. Though it had been cold for the last month, it hadn't snowed yet. It had been a predictably British sort of Christmas. Not white, but brown and grey and squatty. There had been no pure white sheets of incorruptible snow, nor even a few token powdery flakes falling from the sky. There had, however, been rain, and plenty of it. Rain which tripped it down in stair rods on Christmas Eve and Boxing Day. It hadn't rained on Christmas itself, which had been something of a small mercy, but it had been continuously cloudy and overcast throughout the holy day. Ethel hadn't gone outside on Christmas, though her parents and her brothers had. They'd asked if she'd like to take a turn in the woods herself to get some colour in her cheeks, but Ethel had declined these generous invitations. Ethel had thought it would be too muddy, and she hadn't wanted to twist her ankle. Fortunately, it hadn't rained at all in the ensuing week. The forest floor oh my god, I was doing so good. The forest floor might once have been squelching mud and mire, but now the dirt was reassuringly cold and compact. Ethel was unsure whether it would last very long, however, not if it really did begin to rain. The moon overhead was round and full at night. It was a perfect pearl, an earring nestled in the ear of a beautiful woman. Lauren had nagged Ethel to get her own ears pierced, but Ethel had never wanted to do it to go along with it. She worried it would hurt, and anyway, she hadn't really seen the point in it. She didn't understand the appeal of poking holes in herself, not so she could gussy herself up with studs and hoops and glinting bits of gold. She had no interest in making herself a target for any thieving magpies. Lauren had always laughed at Ethel's unease. Don't be so dopey, heaps of girls, even younger than you, get their ears pierced. I was only 7 when I had mine done, and it didn't hurt at all. But Ethel had remained firm. She could be stubborn about the strangest of things. Lauren had been bemused by her daughter's indifference, but she hadn't pushed the issue. Not too much, at least. Instead, Lauren had shrugged and said, "Oh well, suit yourself. You are being daft though, Effie." That was how most of Ethel's conversations with her mother went. She was always calling her daft. Sometimes Ethel took offense, even though it was a very mild insult, better even than the kinds the kids said on the playground. Sometimes, however, she thought that her mother had a point. She really was daft. She was being daft right now, wandering through the woods so very late at night. But still, she didn't stop. She kept walking, the foliage crunching underfoot. Sometimes Ethel liked to imagine that she was a heroine from a romantic poem when she wandered through the woods, a nameless beauty Lord Byron might have committed to the paper, who walked with all the grace of the night itself. But Ethel knew that this was nothing more than a fantasy. She was, in all aspects, hopelessly plain. maybe that was why Clementine had... No, Ethel wasn't gonna think about that. She did have to think about her thesis, however. It was weighing on her. Why, she wondered, had she been silly enough to write a thesis on romantic poets when they focused so intensely, obsessively even, on things which are beautiful? If they weren't waxing poetic on beautiful women, then they were writing the beauties of nature, of lakes and forests and hills and dizzyingly high cliffs caped with snow. Sometimes Ethel liked to read about the beauties of nature. It was rarer that she liked to read about beautiful women. The former was uplifting, but the latter was just depressing. Was that why she was struggling with her thesis so much? Was it the subject matter? Ethel didn't think that she had lost interest in her poetry, but her enthusiasm had definitely dwindled. Maybe it was inevitable when Clementine had been the one to pique her interest in the subject. Clementine had always been very passionate about poetry, romantic poetry in particular. Through reading these old poems with Clementine, Ethel found something in them to appreciate herself, something she had never noticed before. But maybe it wasn't the words of the poems that she appreciated, but the way they sounded in Clementine's mouth when she spoke them. Had Ethel only pretended to be interested in poetry because she wanted to have more in common with Clementine? In retrospect, that seemed depressingly likely. Ethel had wanted Clementine to like her. She had been almost slavish in the way she followed her about, laughing at all of her jokes a little too loudly, affirming that yes, of course, all of her essays were wonderfully original. She even offered to be Clementine's caddy when they had been on campus. Ethel had been only too happy to buy Clementine drinks from the vending machine or snacks from the student shop whenever she so desired. Ethel had wanted Clementine to like her so badly for such a long time. Then Clementine had liked her, and it was wonderful. For over a year, Ethel had been suspended upon the clouds. Nothing could have hurt her, until it all came crashing down. Had that been inevitable? Maybe she should have expected it. Ethel shuddered. She felt very, very cold and uncomfortable alongside it. This coldness did not abate the further Ethel walked into the woods. An icy chill coiled inside her guts, clenched about her heart like a vice. She could feel it, too, upon the crown of her head trickling down her neck. She could feel... Oh. Was that rain? It looked like Mr. Brown had been right. The rain came slowly at first, and irregularly, but it didn't take long before spears of the stuff started pelting down. The rain made everything look faint and blurry, as if it had been viewed through a filter. Something in the undergrowth rustled, and Ethel glanced in its direction, the wind whipping around her hair around her face. What was that? Ethel knew the answer to that was probably nothing. Or, if it wasn't nothing, then it was a small, insignificant sort of something. It must have been a rabbit seeking shelter from the rain. That, or a vole. Or maybe a sodden squirrel. There was nothing for Ethel to worry about, apart from the miserable weather, of course. Ethel shouldn't have ventured so far into the woods, but it was too late to worry about that now. She couldn't double back on herself in hopes of avoiding the rain. Her home was a good half-hour walk away. Ethel had come further than she had meant to, and had fallen quite literally off the beaten path. The trees now rose up about her, dark and ominous, like mute watchmen standing sentinel. Ethel looked about worriedly. She had no idea when the rain was going to stop, but she doubted it would be any time soon. She had to take shelter somewhere, but where? What about the church? St. Catherine's was an old, crooked building which bordered the forest. It was located on the fringe of Oxbury, away from the rest of the houses. Ethel's parents weren't religious, but her grandmother was, and she'd taken Ethel to St. Catherine's a few times in the past, mostly for Easter and Christmas services, where they sang hymns praising a god none of them put all that much stock in. Ethel wasn't very religious either. She must have inherited it from her father, just like her freckles. But she did wonder on occasions if the world was governed by some greater power nobody could see. Ethel had even tried praying a few times, as it happened, to see if some mysterious greater being would answer. But she had felt silly and self-conscious, even though she had been on her own, and she soon stopped. She hadn't been able to rid herself of the mental image of her father, scoffing as he said, "God, what a load of bollocks. The only god I believe in is Jimi Hendrix." Oh, okay. Ethel hadn't been about to pray to Jimi Hendrix, of course, and the mere idea had been so silly that it dampened her momentary religious musings. Ethel still wasn't sure if she believed in God, but if he did exist, she was sure he wouldn't mind if she took shelter in one of his churches for a while. If she could avoid the worst of the rain, she would have nothing negative to say about the subject of organized religion in the foreseeable future. It wasn't like Ethel had any particular vendetta against Christianity anyway, not like her father, who railed against it as being illogical and impractical. Jude found a lot of things illogical and impractical. Ethel knew that her love of English literature ranked quite highly on that list. Ethel bit her lip. Then she began to pick her way through the forest. The rain was coming down even harder now, thick and fast and unforgiving, and it obscured her vision. It didn't help that it was so dark either. The light from June's own torch wasn't doing much help. It was hard for Ethel to keep her footing. The floor was mulchy, and it was festooned with arched raised things which threatened to trip Ethel with every step. Ethel sidestepped a thorn bush and very nearly walked smack dab into a tree, though she was able to oh my god, I know this word, I just can't say it. Circumnavigate just in time. That had been a close call. As little as Ethel enjoyed being rained on, she enjoyed the thought of breaking a limb even less. Ethel continued to walk, picking up speed as she did. The church wasn't so far away now. She would be able to duck inside and dry herself off, provided, of course, the door was unlocked. She broke through the last line of trees, her clothes sticking to her skin like turpelin, and she looked up at St. Catherine's. The church was small and squat, but it did look oddly imposing in the dark, its tiled roof superimposed against a wickedly thin crescent moon. Wait. The moon wasn't crescent, though. The moon was full. Unless she's saying it's crescent now because of the clouds. But it wasn't crescent before. It was definitely full. St. Catherine's arched wooden door loomed over Ethel as she approached it, almost consuming in the darkness. Ethel had been sure she would be able to take shelter here, like the persecuted Esmeralda in The Hunchback of Notre Dame, but maybe not. It wouldn't have been too surprising if the warden had locked the church come sunset. It wouldn't do to have vandals laying waste to its interior, making off with the burnished bronze candlesticks and the prayer mats. Ethel didn't think there was anything worth nicking in St. Catherine's, but some people would take anything if it wasn't nailed down. It wasn't like there was much else to do in Oxbury other than look for the potential decomposing corpse of the presumably dead Delaney girl. But now that she'd come this far, she felt compelled to try. It would have been foolish to back down now. Ethel paused to wipe her brow free of rainwater. Not that it mattered much, really, given how fiercely the rain was pouring down. Then she reached for the wooden door of St. Catherine's. She pressed her palm against the door and pushed inwards. She didn't expect the door to give way beneath her touch, but Ethel gasped, surprised as the door cleaved beneath her touch. So it was open after all. That was reassuring. Ethel pushed against the door with more strength than before, and the door swung inwards. The door was heavy, but it offered a little resistance, creaking loudly like some subterranean monster. Ethel could see a sliver of the church through the gap which emerged, and she could see it was dark. This, however, was to be expected. It was very late at night. It seemed unlikely that there would be anybody else here at this hour. She would have been alarmed, in fact, if there was. It came to a great surprise, therefore, when Ethel finally slipped inside the building and she saw her. Are we finally getting lesbians? God, you can see her underwear through her skirt. I'm trying not to look. I'm trying to be respectful. Who are you? From the back, she looks like Francesca von Karma. If you know Ace Attorney, you know. There was a girl standing in the chancel, framed by stained glass window. Ethel couldn't see the girl's face, but she could see how slender her waist was and how shapely her calves were. The girl wasn't dressed for downpour. She wasn't dressed for a British winter in general, rain notwithstanding. The girl's clothes were simple, a summer dress cinched in the back with a ribbon. Her legs were bare. She wore no leggings nor any tights. It didn't even look like she was wearing socks. Instead, she wore a pair of sandals, which had the slightest suggestion of a heel. The back of the girl's feet were exposed. Oh yeah, Brent would love that. Feet which were arched and raised a couple of centimeters above the floor. Oh yeah, Brent would really like that. The girl was only standing, but there was a curious grace to her, even as she remained motionless, which made Ethel's heart ache. Ethel had yet to see her face, but she didn't need to. She already knew that this girl would be heartbreakingly beautiful. The girl wasn't even a little bit damp, not like Ethel. She must have arrived at the church before the rain had started. That, or she had the foresight to bring an umbrella with her. Oops. Why, Ethel wondered, hadn't she brought an umbrella too? She could have ducked back inside after Mr. Brown warned her about the rain to retrieve one. Wouldn't that have been the sensible thing to do? Ethel hadn't wanted to do the sensible thing, however. She hadn't wanted to listen to Mr. Brown. Mr. Brown had been her teacher once, and she had wanted to prove that she wasn't a child anymore, and she no longer had to take his advice. How very wrong she was. Once more, her mother's cheerful castigations returned to Ethel. Oh well, suit yourself. You are being daft though, Effie. Why was it that all of the adults in her life seemed to know better than she did? Lauren had never been to university, and neither had Jude, but they were far more sensible. Maybe it was because no matter what Ethel liked to tell herself, she wasn't a real adult. She was still a child. A little girl playing pretend. Okay, so I have a thing for this. When you are 18, you are a baby again. Right? So, like, you're an adult, but you're a baby, because now you have to learn all of the ways of being an adult, right? So, a 19-year-old would be a 1-year-old adult. Makes sense, right? Because being 18 and starting to find your own independence and all of your responsibilities as an adult basically does feel like you're starting from ground zero again. So, she is still a child. She's a 4-year-old adult. But there was little sense standing there sadly, smelling of petrica? Slowly dribbling rainwater all over the uneven stone floor. The girl was not simply standing there, she was singing. Ethel recognized the song which tumbled from her lips, pure and clear as spring water. It was Ave Maria. I don't know what that is. Ethel stood there, stunned into silence. The more the girl sang, the less the rest of the world seemed to matter. The steady pitter-patter of the rain fell away. It simply ceased to exist. For several moments, it was just Ethel and the girl's lovely, lyrical voice. Ethel stood there dumbly, letting the girl's voice wash over her, when... Oh, you're actually not that gorgeous up front. Sorry, maybe it's the art style, I don't know. My, what do we have here? Oh. Ethel jumped as the girl turned about, her bobbed hair fluttering. The girl was standing in such a way that the stained glass window at the back of the church framed her face perfectly. The positioning of it was so perfect, in fact, it looked like a shot from a movie. The girl, a trained actress, told precisely where to stand. The moonlight which shone through the window backlit the girl's short hair so it glowed, just like a dark inverted halo. The girl didn't look like any of the angels Ethel had seen pictured before, however. Not the romantic sort of golden locks and baby blue eyes, nor the biblically accurate ones made of flickering flames and hundreds of vast staring eyes. The girl only had 2 eyes, which were positioned where they should have been, and framed with sweep of dark lashes. Her nose was snub and her lips curved upward into a small smile. Her skin, meanwhile, was very white. She didn't have wings, and neither did she wear a robe, though her pale green dress looked almost angelic. There was too much mischief in her smile for her consonants to be truly seraphic, but she still took Ethel's breath away. Hello, stranger. I've not seen you around before. Not that that's saying much, I guess. I don't know many people around here. Were you watching me? Ethel's face, which had always had a pinkish undertone, had now turned red. She dropped her gaze to her feet and she mumbled. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to... So you were watching me. Ethel gnawed at the damp, fleshy inside of her cheek. A few moments of silence passed, silence which was filled with the steady pitter-patter of the rain outside, which fell on the grass and the dirt and all the tombstones. Ethel could feel her palms beginning to sweat. Palms are sweaty, knees weak, arms are heavy. Slowly, like a mechanical doll in need of recalibrating, she nodded. I thought so. I'm glad you're not a liar. I like honest girls. Girl? Ethel frowned. Manny had taken great offense to being called a boy the moment he started secondary school. He was in Year 9 now, but his voice had dropped and he already had facial hair, and everybody called him a young man. Why then did Ethel have to be a girl when she was already 21? She was far too old for it, wasn't she? Girl. I call women in their mid-30s girl, okay? If they take offense to it, then they haven't told me. I don't think anyone cares. Oh, you don't like being called a girl? I didn't offend you, did I? Oh, no, it's fine. I don't mind. I mean, I probably offended you more with my staring. I should have said something. I'm sorry. Oh, no need to apologize, silly. I don't mind. You don't? The girl shook her head. I was only teasing. It might be rude to eavesdrop, but I prefer singing when I have a captive audience. Otherwise, it feels a bit pointless. So what did you think? About what? About my singing, obviously. Was it good? Great? The best thing you've ever heard? You were... enchanting. Enchanting, eh? That's a bit more flowery than I was expecting. Do you like reading by any chance? I study English literature at university, so I guess. I knew it. You did give me that impression, so... The girl took a seat upon the pew, then shot Ethel a look which could only be described as come hither. With a thin, half-moon smile, she patted the pew, her pale hand cleaving through the darkness. Why don't you come here and talk to me? It feels like it's been an age since I last had a chat with a girl my age, and I'm dying for it. Oxbury is so boring. Ethel hung back, abashed, almost afraid at the girl's enticements. Why was this girl so interested in her? She wasn't anything special. It seemed ludicrous, unthinkable even, that she would care. The girl really must have been bored. Was Ethel her last resort? A last-ditch attempt to keep herself amused? Hello? The girl cocked her head to the side. Her smile, an amused, impish one. Didn't you hear me? I would have thought the rain would have washed those ears of yours out. Won't you come sit with me? I can hardly have a conversation with you when you're halfway across the church. Unless you're afraid I might bite. Ethel allowed herself to think briefly of the girl's bite, of sharp incisors digging into her throat like something of a gothic novel, and she shivered. She wasn't sure if she wholly disliked that thought, and this left her feeling unsettled. Bite me, woman! No, it's fine. I'm not afraid. I'll sit. Ethel crossed the church, her soles slapping against the flagstones, and then sat. It was still damp, and droplets of water slid from her clothes as she walked. Small puddles tracked her progress from the entrance of the church with its domed door all the way to the pew where she settled herself. Ethel's long skirt was clinging to her thighs, and her sweater was uncomfortably damp. Ethel tended to wear baggy, oversized clothes, but the rainwater had rendered them uncomfortably skin-tight. She would have felt self-conscious regardless, being seen in such a state by anybody, even Mr. Brown, but being perceived by a girl as pretty as whatever her name was, wasn't doing her self-esteem any favors. Wetly, Ethel looked down at her lap, and wanly she threaded her fingers together. Wanly, I think is how it said. So, she had sat, just as the girl had asked. Now what? My, you're quite the awkward one, aren't you? You've barely said more than a word to me since seeing me. Please don't tell me you're really afraid of me. What? No! I'm just shy. I'm sorry. You've not done anything wrong. It's all my fault. The girl frowned, one hand resting beneath her chin. You say it's your fault, but I don't think you've done anything wrong either. You don't? No, I don't. I don't see why you feel the need to apologize. I'm not upset, I was just stating a fact. You're so quiet. I was worried whether I'd done something to upset you. But I guess this is just the way you are? Oh, sorry. I've never been really good at small talk. I never really know what to say, so, I'm sorry. I'm just so boring. Now, I'll be the judge of that. I've not known you long enough to find you boring, and I wouldn't have started talking to you in the first place if you hadn't piqued my interest. You don't think I'm a poor judge of character, do you? In this case, maybe she was, but Ethel was so afraid of offending the girl, she hastily said, I don't think so, but it's hard to say. I mean, I don't know you very well. You raise a good point. We are strangers, and this has been a rather strange meeting. I wouldn't be surprised if you're wondering who this crazy girl is, who's been singing by herself in the church at night. I must seem like a total nutter. I don't know if I'd say that. You probably wouldn't, no. I think you're too considerate. I wouldn't be surprised if that's what you were thinking, though. Well, go on. You can be honest with me. You must think I'm balmy. I don't know if I'd call you that, but it is a bit strange, I suppose. Oh, come on. You're being too generous. I know I'm more than a bit strange. Your hobbies might be a bit unusual, I guess. Again, with the tact. You'd make a good politician. But Who am I to judge? I went for a walk in the woods late at night when I knew it was gonna rain. I'm not much better. I guess not. Maybe that's what brought us together then. What? The rain? No, silly. I think there's a deeper meaning behind our meeting than this. Deeper? Yeah. We must be, like, two alike souls. Or maybe two birds of a feather, if that doesn't sound too out there. We're both weirdos, so we ought to stick together. The world isn't very accepting of people like us. Now, what's your name? Surely you must have one. Oh, I'm Ethel. Ethel's voice was quiet when she replied, as if she was repeating a curse word, and to her ears, it might as well have been one. As far as names went, Ethel wasn't very flattering. It was so old-fashioned, it spoke more of elderly spinsters than 21-year-olds. Yeah, that's what I was saying at the start of the game. Ethel is a very old-fashioned name. Shania had teased Ethel about her name incessantly, as though she hadn't been named after a country singer. Ethel would have preferred to be a Shania any day of the week than a boring old Ethel, though. Ethel often resented her parents for landing on that name. I'm not going to read the parentheses anymore, it feels kind of unnecessary. Ethel had resented her parents for landing her with that name, especially when her brothers had suitably modern names. Why was she the only one stuck with a name plucked straight from a dusty old archives of a Victorian poorhouse? Aw, thank you for the emotes, that's so cute. Also, my husband misses you? That's pretty funny. It was so unfair. The girl didn't seem to mind Ethel's name, however, because she laughed. Ethel, how pretty. No, it isn't. You're teasing me. No, I'm not. Honest to God. We're in a church and I'd never take the Lord's name in vain. I'm a good Christian like that, you know. You are? No. Now I'm really pulling your leg. Right. Well, I suspected as much. You shouldn't be so self-conscious, though. Ethel is a perfectly nice name. I've met girls who were saddled with much, much worse. Right. Well, try telling that to Shania. Who's Shania? Oh, nobody. She doesn't matter. Not anymore. You wouldn't know her. Ethel's voice trailed off, and then she frowned. By the way, where are you from? You aren't local, are you? Oh no, thank the God, I don't believe in it for it. This village is so small. I think I'd go mad. Madder than I am, I mean, if I had to live here. Are you visiting then? That's right. I came here to stay with my grandparents over the holidays. My parents are pretty busy right now, so they dumped me here. I've only been here a couple of days, but I'm already bored out of my tree. I couldn't sleep, so I went for a walk and figured I may as well stretch my legs. I was afraid I'd go stir-crazy otherwise, but maybe it's too late for that. I see. Will you be staying in Oxbury for long? Not too long. My parents will be picking me up in a few days. Oh, right. Of course. Ethel tried to keep the disappointment from her voice when she spoke. Why should she care when the girl went home? She hardly knew her. She still didn't know her name, in fact. Maybe Ethel thought worriedly. She should have asked the girl for that girl. What? She should have asked the name of the girl, I think is what it's supposed to say. That would have been the polite thing to do, but Ethel spoke to others so rarely she found it difficult to know what the polite thing to do was. So, she was so awkward. Well, there was time enough to write this oversight. I'm sorry, but it just occurred to me. I'm pretty familiar with this village. I know my way around rather well, which is how I wound up here. Not that that's saying very much, since there isn't all that much to know, but you know what I mean. Right. Ethel blinked. Her plans to ask for the girl's name summarily scruppered. I feel like this... You know what? I'm gonna keep my opinions to myself. There was a small pause. Then... Do you come to Oxbury often? It's more often than I'd like. This place is pretty dead. But, oh well. I wind up in Oxbury during the holidays, since my parents are always palming me off to my grandparents. I've spent a lot of my summer here, and a lot of my winters too. Ugh. The summers here are depressing enough, since there's nothing to do, but the winters are even worse. It's so cold and so dark, and it's so wet too. It rains so much the ground gets all mulchy. It's pretty miserable. No offense. I don't want to insult this place too much. Not when you were born here. I hope you don't mind. Alright, chat, I'm really quickly gonna go pee. Because I've been holding in pee for a good hot minute, and I also have a sandwich that I want to try and start eating. So I'm gonna go pee, and then I'm gonna come back, and we're gonna have a bit of a sandwich break before we continue. Let me read this first. Tried playing Ratchet & Clank Size Matters is clunky. It's an understatement. Yeah. There's a reason why I haven't played Size Matters. Alright, I'm gonna pee, and then when I come back, we're gonna have a sandwich break, okay? Okay, give me 5 minutes. Alright, I'm back. I want to eat a bit of my sandwich before we start reading again. I will say, I've read a couple of visual novels before, right? And they do tend to be a bit flowery with their vocabulary. A bit like, you know, a bit wordy, to put it blunt. I feel like this visual novel is kind of wordy in a lot of the wrong places, if that makes sense. Like, it takes forever to get a conversation to continue to move forward because there's like 4 paragraphs of Ethel lamenting about her family. And I'm sure that will be important to the story eventually, but right now, it feels a little bit weird. This is a good sandwich. Hello, Purple. How are you? They're basically a book with pictures. Yeah. But, like, what I'm saying is the places and the scenes that this that this visual novel chooses to hyperfixate on and spend a lot of words on are places where it doesn't feel relevant. You know what I mean? I'm not complaining that it's too many words. I'm saying that there are some places that don't have enough words, and then there are some places that have too much. They haven't prioritized where they need to be spending their word count. Alright, I'm gonna have one more bite of my sandwich and then I can finish the rest later. Give me an example. I mean, I kind of already did. Like, you're in the middle of a conversation with a character, and then the conversation just doesn't move forward for a good, like, 5 minutes. Because the, like, quote-unquote narrator has decided to go on a monologue about, like, Ethel's parents. And, like, little nitty-gritty things about her relationship with her family, which... I'm sure it's relevant to the story, but it feels like it's making you pause the actual story to tell you about stuff that's not gonna matter because her parents are overseas. We're not gonna meet her parents, okay? Like, let us have the conversation. If you're gonna have an inner monologue, maybe have the inner monologue be relevant to, like, the conversation that she's having, and not, like, you know... talk for, like, 5 minutes about your family while this girl is trying to seduce you, you know what I'm saying? Like a movie type of telling, except annoying. Yeah, kind of. Alright, I'll eat the rest of my sandwich later. I just needed something to keep me going. I don't want to insult this place too much. Okay, reread this. It's fine. I'm not offended. Actually, I agree with you. Well, good. I'm glad I'm not the only one. Like, girly, time and place. Yeah, stop trauma dumping. Yes, exactly. Exactly. Like, we ran into her 4th grade teacher, or 5th grade teacher, Mr. Brown, and we had to sit through probably like 5 to 7 minutes of internal monologue exposition before the conversation with the teacher could actually start. And even then, she kept pausing the conversation to, like, internally monologue about stuff as the conversation went on. And what could have been, like, maybe a 15-20 minute conversation turned into, like, 30 to 45 minutes. It's a different story with my grandparents, though. They love this place. They've been living here for... God, I don't know. Their whole long lives, more or less, so they're pretty settled. They won't hear a bad word against Oxbury. They're obsessed. They were old when when I was a kid, but they're even older now, if you can credit that. I think that's why they like Oxbury. It doesn't change, just like them. It's completely static. Ethel frowned, lost in contemplation. The girl's voice was light, but there was something sad about her words. Something which twisted Ethel's insides. Have you ever seen any Russian literature? No, I have not. I have not. I didn't study, like, literature? I'm trying to think. I had to do English studies for, like, high school, but after that, I didn't really study any form of literature. When people reach their twilight years, typically when they pass into their 80s, they become almost impossible to discern their age from their appearance. There wasn't that much difference, or so Ethel had always thought, between 80 and 90. Oh, yeah, I know. I'm sorry. Old age had an annoying... anonymizing factor It strips the individuality out of people, rendering them undistinguishable. I mean, that's pretty ageist, don't you think? To say all old people look the same, and thus their identity is stripped from them? That's actually a horrible thing to say. As far as Ethel was concerned, old people were all white-haired and roomy-eyed, their faces scored with wrinkles. Well, yeah, but they still have individual characteristics, like, aesthetically, that take them apart from each other. That's so insensitive, man. Like, what the fuck? I think I'm getting too offended by that comment, but, like, that was an out-of-pocket comment, right? Their fingers were choppy, their hands shook, and they complained of myriad of problems. Bad backs, bad eyes, bad hearts. Well, I'm sorry, Ethel, but I'm pretty sure you wear glasses, so there you go, bad eyes, and you're 21, so within the next, like, I want to say year or two, you're gonna also have a bad back. Ethel didn't like the body she inhabited at the present, but she liked the thought of getting older even less. She didn't think she ever wanted to be 50, much less 80 or 90. She liked life too little to try and cling on to it for that long. What was the point? My parents have been having my grandparents look after me since I was a kid, but I don't think they've ever been cut for the job. They could never keep up with me. An inner dialogue about hating old people. I know, that was the most out-of-pocket one we've had so far. I was a wee little thing back then. About this tall. I just want to get to the lesbians, you know? I'm tired of the trauma dumping. We've been trauma dumping for 2 hours. Can we please get some lesbianism? The girl gestured with her right hand for emphasis. But even then, I got this feeling I was no good for my poor old grandparents. I used to fret having to run around after me would drive them into their early graves. Okay, that is the sentence, I just read it wrong. But it's been years since then, and they are both alive and kicking. But not literally. They're so old, I don't think they're capable of it. Are you afraid they might dislocate their hips if they did that? I've gotta say, I didn't expect that from you. You're more fiery than you look. Okay, she doesn't wear glasses. Okay, my bad, G. Oh, I hope you don't mind. Nah, I think it's funny. I like the contrast of your sweet exterior and your spicy interior. It was a surprise, but it was a pleasant one. I don't know if I'm particularly spicy. But thank you. You're welcome. I hope you're not getting the wrong idea, though. I know I'm being mean about my grandparents, but I do love them. They're the only grandparents I have, and I owe them a lot. They're dear to me. But I've had to spend a lot of time with them, and in this pokey little village, and it does get stifling. Someday, I'd like to take off, see a bit more of the world. It's all very constricting. What about your parents? Where do they live? That's spicy. Yeah, you did just say that. Oh, some tiny town not too far away from here. And they never taken you on holiday with them before? They never bothered. Whenever they go anywhere, I've always been dumped here with my old folks. And let me tell you, they really are old. Can we stop talking about how old your parents are? Like, your grandparents are? Like, I get it. Your grandparents are old. Can we... At least you still have grandparents. Can we move on? 100? Ethel stared, all the while trying to solve some basic mental maths. Ethel's grandparents on her mother's... I don't care. I don't care about your grandparents. I do not care. It's starting to kind of irk me. The exposition this game is giving. Ethel was still trying to work this out. Something the girl seemed to notice, because she smiled. I'm exaggerating, of course. Oh, right. Of course. I'm not joking when I say they're old, though. I don't care. I don't care. I get it. Your grandparents are old and you hate this town. I guess it could be worse, but I don't like having to spend all of my holidays out in this dump. Blah, blah, blah. I wish my parents would take care of me, blah, blah, blah. The girl sighed. She sounded bitter, unexpectedly so. So, given how lightly she'd spoken before, it was obvious that a degree of resentment simmered beneath her seemingly irreverent surface. Resentment which didn't seem to be buried all that deeply. Well, if she had inner demons, she wouldn't be the only one. She was only human. Oh! The girl suddenly gasped, wide-eyed, and stared at Ethel. Where are my manners? I've spent all this time talking myself, but I've not asked about you. You were born in Oxbury, weren't you? Oh, yes, that's right. And you still live here, I'm guessing? With my parents and my two brothers, yeah, Rowan and Manny. Ah, I see. I don't have any siblings myself, no sisters or brothers. I've always wondered what it would be like, though. It's alright, I guess. You don't sound too sure. This is the kind of person I'm most polite to simply because I want to get away from people as fast as possible. Yeah, you just smile and nod while Ethel's talking as you slowly back away. Well, it's hard for me to say what it's like. I've had brothers most of my life. Rowan was born... blah, 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 I don't care. I don't care. If I had sibling or two to keep me company, maybe spending all my time here wouldn't be so bad. But who knows? Maybe they'd just annoy me. I don't know if I'd like to share my stuff with them either. I can be pretty selfish. The girl's eyes glinted when she said this, a spark of mischief which made Ethel's skin prickle. There was something a little unsettling about the way she looked at Ethel. Her eyes were intense, as though she meant to devour Ethel from tip to toe. Music is choppy. The game's just kinda like that. It's not choppy on my end. I'm listening to it on playback, 1 second. Yeah, I just listened to it back. It's not choppy at all. I think there might be something wrong with your connection. But surely that was something more than a fancy. So, where's your family right now, Ethel? Are they back at home waiting for you? I hope they're not worried about you. It is pretty late. I wouldn't want to make them anxious. Oh, no. It's fine. They won't be... Oh, yeah. They're going to Australia. I get it. I get it. Australia is fantastic. Can we, like... Okay, wait. I actually do want to read what they're saying about Australia. I've never been before. But is it true their seasons are all mixed up compared to ours? Yes, we have summer when you guys have winter. They're reversed, yeah. The winter is like our summer. It's something to do with the hemispheres. Crazy. I'm so used to wet, damp, old Oxbury. I think I would take some getting used to. Yeah, I think you do have a bit of a delay, Purple. I'm sorry. That's what I thought too. I was worried going there would throw me off, especially when it's so cold here. Is that why you didn't go then? Did you turn down their invitation? Or did they not invite you? They did, yeah. My ticket was booked and everything. Mum had been planning it for a few months. Since April this year, actually. She was pretty insistent that I accompany her. It was supposed to be a family holiday, but... well... Ethel sighed. How, she wondered, was she supposed to explain her reasoning for staying behind to this girl? She wasn't entirely sure if she understood her reasoning herself. Yeah, I don't get it. Like, trust me, I went to Uruguay with my family December last year, and it was an incredibly stressful, incredibly, volatile experience, not because of the country itself. It's the country where a lot of my family still lives, you know? It's a beautiful, beautiful place. I loved spending time there. But, like, being under the same roof as my family for 3 weeks when I haven't lived with them for 5 years, it was dreadful. It was dreadful, and if I could go back in time, as beautiful as the country was, and as much fun as I had actually seeing the sights, I would probably turn to my mum and say either I put money aside and get my own hotel room, or I do not come with you. That's honestly it. And it's not even my mum's fault. It was no one's fault. It was just really high tensions because there was a lot of shit going on. She had overcomplicated things by being so moody. But wasn't that what she always did? She was forever making things more difficult. Not that she wanted to. It just seemed to happen. Hey, Ethel. You didn't have an argument with your family, did you? Oh, no, it's not like that. We're fine, really. Everything's fine. Then why didn't you go? I'd leave England at the drop of a hat if I could. It's so wet and cold and... ugh. I can't stand it here. It's so gloomy. Australia sounds much nicer. Yeah, look, listen, mysterious girl, I hate to put a damper on your mood, but it's actually cold and wet and gloomy outside literally right this second. I can hear the tippy-tapping of the rain outside the window. If you came yesterday, it would have been really, really hot. It does sound nicer, but... The girl shifted a little closer to Ethel. So much so, their thighs brushed. Ooh! Wait, finally getting lesbians? Also, I'm talking so much that it's stuffing my nose. I don't know. I'm talking so much that I'm starting to get a stuffy nose. It's not that I don't get on with my parents. They're nice enough, I think. My mum nags me about my clothes and my hair sometimes, and my dad can be a bit insensitive, maybe. I'm not reading the parentheses because it's so unnecessary. But they're not bad parents. They're not abusive. Other people have it much worse. It'd be unfair for me to complain. And yet, despite that, you still didn't go on holiday with them? It's not like that. What is it like then? It's my fault, really. They've not done anything wrong, it's all me. What's all you? I don't understand. It's not that complicated, really. It's just, it's the way I think about things. My parents are fine, they're lovely even. And my brothers, we argue sometimes, but I think that's normal. All siblings argue. Clementine always picked fights with her sisters too. Can I ask a weird question unrelated? Yes. Ask away. Let's go. Clementine? My girlfriend, Ethel was about to say, but that would have been a lie. Clementine wasn't her girlfriend anymore. They'd spoken so little after their breakup, Ethel was uncertain whether she was even her friend. What was Clementine to her now? Am I weird for crying over the passing of a horse that a fictional character is based on? No. No, I don't think so. I think crying over a horse that a fictional character is based off of is very similar energy to crying over a voice actor who voiced a character that you liked. I think it's very invalid. Yeah, I saw that in the Discord server. I don't know the horse. I don't play the game, so I don't really feel any particular way about it, but I am sorry for everyone who is upset about it right now. Was she anything to her now? She's just a person I know from my university. We talked a bit. Ah, a friend then. We were friends. I don't know about now. Not that it matters. None of it does, really. People are making comics. I'm not okay. That's alright. Obviously, this is going to be a massive shake-up to the community of that game, so I expect that there's going to be a lot of artwork, a lot of, like, people crying together. I think it's perfectly fine to not be okay for a while. What doesn't matter? My feelings, maybe? I've been a bit down, I guess. I couldn't tell. But it's all very silly, and it's mostly self-inflicted anyway. I just get this, like, in strange moods. I mean, that's what my mom says. She thinks I could buck my ideas up. Maybe she's right. It's not like I want to feel sad. Of course you don't. I don't think anybody does. Lie. I have met people who fetishize their own sadness and their own victimhood. Anyway, carry on. But sometimes... No, most of the time, actually. I feel like a burden. I just bother my parents and my brothers. And Clementine, too. That's why I didn't go on the holiday with them. They insisted, but... I don't know. They said the holiday wouldn't be the same without me, which is probably right, but I think it'd be for the better. I've been so gloomy, I don't think they'd want to put up with me. I don't think that's true. My auntie was incredibly upset when we went to Uruguay because my grandmother, her mother, was supposed to join us on that trip. My mum had, like, purchased her ticket for her because the year before my grandmother had covered something for one of my siblings to go. And then she, like, had a heart attack and died, like, right in front of my auntie. And so, yeah, my auntie was going through a lot of feelings. She was always struggling to eat, crying, feeling sick, and I don't think anyone in the family would say that her going through her depressive, like, feelings ruined the holiday. It was supposed to be a very, like, it was supposed to be a family event. And then when my grandmother passed, it kind of turned into a bit of catharsis, a bit of closure, to reconnect with the Uruguayan side of our family like that. So I don't think your family would have thought that way, but maybe I'm wrong. My parents were planning this holiday for ages, and they were looking forward to it. That's why I didn't want to come along. I know I'm not in the right mood to enjoy it. I'd make everybody unhappy, and then I'd spoil everything. I think. Ethel's fingers, lying on her lap, curled in on themselves, her nails, which were short and serrated, digging into her palms. Her shoulders shook. Then, very quietly, she said, I think they'd be happier without me. Clementine certainly had been. Who was to say that her family wouldn't share her opinion? I'm sorry. I shouldn't have said all that. I was being silly, really. I don't know. I know my family do care. Obviously they do. It's just sometimes... Shh. Ethel started, surprised. The girl was sitting even closer to her than before, her fingers twined together and her eyes round, almost owl-like in their concern. Ethel stammered, stunned by this sudden, unexpected closeness. Stunned, too, by the sensation of the girl's skin upon her own. Her hand was icy cold. It's alright. You don't need to try and explain yourself. Not to me. I understand how you feel. I understand only too well. You do? A little. You aren't the only person who's been feeling lonely. But I wish you wouldn't be so hard on yourself. Don't say that nobody cares. I know I shouldn't. It's childish to think that way. Of course my parents care, but... They don't make you feel like they do? Ethel looked into the girl's eyes, held captive by the intensity of her gaze. For a few moments, she couldn't do anything except sit there. She swallowed, tasting sawdust in her throat and dead, empty air. Then, like an aged automation that was in dire need of oiling, she shook her head. Oh, you poor dear. It sounds like you've been very... oh my god, I can't read anymore. It sounds like life's been very hard on you. But try not to worry. You aren't alone. I know how it feels, being unwanted. It's awful. It feels so unjustified in your case. After all, the girl reached out. She cupped Ethel's cheeks with her fingers, her palms icy against Ethel's warm skin, and said, "You're so nice." "Do you really think so?" "I think you must be. Otherwise, you wouldn't have listened to me so patiently when I was complaining about my grandparents." Oh, I did not listen patiently. I skipped through the entire second half of that rant. "You're a sweetheart. And no matter how other people might have made you feel, I'm happy to be spending time with you. Meeting you has been really refreshing, actually. It's almost enough to make me think it was fated." "Fated?" "That's right. I think you were sent here for a reason." Guess that's why she's holding her cheek and not yours. That's fair. That's fair. I don't want her holding my cheek anyway. I take it back. It was no, don't take it back. It was funny. It was funny, Purple. It's okay. I'm not upset. I laughed. Sorry, just having a sip of tea. "You can laugh if you want, but I'm a pretty superstitious person. Maybe it comes from spending so much time with my grandmother. She always put a lot of stock into that sort of thing. Tea leaves and the ailments of the planets and star signs." But I feel bad now? Don't. The only reason you would have to feel bad by saying something like that is that it hurt my feelings. But it didn't. So, there's nothing to feel bad for. "And I don't think our meeting happened for no reason. It must have been ordained by, I don't know, fate, destiny, karma, kismet, call it what you will. Maybe it doesn't matter." Purple, if it makes you feel any better, when talking about my ability to aim and shoot in, like, first-person shooters, Rogue said that I have the sight of a blind man and the reaction time of a sloth. And that was the fucking funniest comment that I got that entire stream. Like, don't worry. You think what you said was mean? I have had much meaner thrown at me, and it makes my day. It makes my day when people are creative with their insults. It's really funny. That is fair, but... It's true. It's true. It's Rogue. It's true. That's fair. But, like I said, I like when people get really creative when they throw, like, smack at me. It's funny. I can appreciate the creativity more than, you know, actually being upset. Maybe I've let one too many of my grandmother's silly stories get to me. The girl leaned in even more closely, if such a thing was possible. Then quietly, she said, sorry. Yeah, like I said before, I'm talking so much that my nose is getting stuffy. I didn't even know that was possible. But there must be a greater reason behind why our paths crossed tonight. I'm sure of it. I've been so lonely here these last few days, with nobody my age to talk to. The girl's eyes continued to bore into Ethel's large, dark eyes lined with long, dark lashes, which seemed pregnant all of a sudden with meaning. Does this... hang on. I wasn't gonna say anything before. But the vocabulary in this game, like, I'm not saying that their use of the word was wrong, because it's technically not. So basically what it means is, like, full of meaning, right? Or, like, significantly meaningful or something like that. But the vocabulary that they try to use in this game makes me feel like they're trying to sound smarter than they actually are. Which is double funny when earlier in the stream I said that I thought English wasn't this person's first language because of the typos that I was seeing. But, you know, I wasn't gonna say anything, but then, like, again, technically not an incorrect use of the word pregnant. It's just really weird. But now I have you. You have me? Yes, I have you. You're mine now, just like I'm yours. I can be your strange singing girl who takes refuge in the church at night to recite hymns, and you can be my wet, windswept stranger come in from the cold. It might also be just an attempt to give a shadow meaning to it. It could be. I'm suspecting it to be like a foreshadowing type thing, because I know there are mushrooms involved in this story if the border wasn't enough to go off of. But still, I think it's odd. I'll wait for you tomorrow night too, in this church, and we can have another wonderful tryst inside the crooked old building. Pregnant, you're mine. Yeah, well, that is another definition of pregnant. It is to be significant or suggestive. But yeah, it just feels weird. How does that sound? Don't you think it's romantic? It's just like something from a fairy tale. Ethel thought of this, the girl's icy fingers upon her own, and as she did, she felt herself blush. It seems so out of place they didn't make it, if they didn't make it so suggestive intentionally. I think it is supposed to be intentionally suggestive, but I still think it's odd. It wasn't a very pretty blush, of course. Ethel wasn't very pretty in general. Her blushes, when they came, were uncomfortably intense, red and blotchy, and not so very dissimilar from acne. She wasn't attractive. Ethel knew she wasn't attractive. But she wondered, in that quiet, understated moment in the church, whether she was pretty to the dark-haired girl who cupped her cheeks. Yuri! Yeah, we haven't gotten to the Yuri yet. This game was supposed to be like 2 to 4 hours long. It's been a while because we've been talking a little bit between dialogue, but we haven't quite gotten to the Yuri yet. If this is a fairy tale, then would this have a happy ending? Well now, that depends. On whether you come back, of course. I'll be waiting here, so don't be a stranger. Stop on by. If you don't, I think we'll both regret it. Oh my god, Kate went with the raid. I didn't even see the raid come in. How you doing? Welcome. We've got Mushroom Yuri. Yuri superiority. I mean, impishly, the girl smiled. Then I won't be able to do this. The girl dipped her head before Ethel could say anything, before she knew what was happening. Ethel soon felt something soft against her lips, and she gasped. She could hardly believe it, but the girl was kissing her. We finally got to the Yuri part. I need a drink. I actually yelled Yuri too loudly. I'm so sorry. You go get your drink. There it is. We finally got there. The kiss lasted but for a few seconds. It was little more than a faint brushing of the lips, but it was enough to make Ethel's heart stammer. She knew, as the girl kissed her, her palms still pressed against her cheeks, that this signaled change, though what sort of change it was, exactly, remained a mystery. It was undeniable, however, that this would alter her holiday for the good. Things would never be the same again. The girl had branded her. Her kiss corroded like acid, disintegrating all of Ethel's thoughts as if they were made of nothing more than the flimsiest, most insubstantial of crepe paper. There was the church. There was the girl. There was the kiss. And there was nothing else at all. Nothing in the whole world. Which, fair. Man, I love Yuri. Yeah, that's fair. We do love Yuri in this house. What? We're getting the intro 2.5 hours into the game? That was ridiculous. Sorry, I wasn't watching that. The rain had let up somewhat when Ethel picked her way back home, but it hadn't abated yet. I can't see those emotes. Oh, I see. A fine smattering of raindrops continued to fall from the obsidian sky, drumming disaffectedly against the foliage above and about her as Ethel trampled through the forest. Yeah, no, I get it. Formal chicken. That's what I'm gonna call it now. Instead of calling it by its name, I'm gonna call it formal chicken. And no one will understand what I'm talking about, but it'll be really funny. The ground was muddy and uneven, and Ethel had to take great care with every single step she took. One wrong move could easily spell a sprained ankle and muddy knees, bruised and bloodied palms. The rain struck Ethel's scalp. It trickled down the nape of her neck. It stuck to her clothes and to her skin, and it chilled her to the bone. By the time Ethel finally managed to make her way back home, more than half an hour later, she was sniffling, like I am right now, because my throat doesn't like that I'm talking too much. Ethel shed her shoes at the front door, and shed her coat not too long after. Her shirt, her skirt, and her socks all went the moment she made her way to the bathroom, where she ran herself a bath. Oh, that's actually really interesting artwork. I kind of like this. I fuck with this. Although I think the arms are a little bit long. Actually, the arms are really long. It's fine. Just don't stare at the arms. Not the shedding toes. I'm sorry. Brent will disapprove. Then, she sunk into the tub, sighing with relief as she submerged herself within the awaiting water. If there was one positive to being caught in the rain, it was taking a nice warm bath always felt better when chilled right down to the bone marrow. Which I agree, yeah. A warm bath or a warm shower feels best after you've come home and, like, you can feel the chill in your bones. Ethel could feel the bathwater restoring life anew into her icy body. It was refreshing, rejuvenating even, and she sighed in dazed relief from it. Ethel almost believed, as she curled herself up inside the tub, that she was being reborn. The water was restorative. It would help her shed her old skin, butterfly-like, so she could emerge from the bath as a brand new girl, a more confident, conventionally pretty girl, with smooth skin which had never known a spot, and hair which wasn't quite so prone to tangling. Her old skin, her old shell, would lie like a deflated balloon in the bottom of the bathtub, grey and bloated and swollen from the soapy water. Ethel would deride it. Then she would discard it. God, Ethel wished she could step out of her own skin, if only for a few brief, glorious moments. But when she finally pulled the plug and stepped out of the tub, the rest of her body came with her. Every last fold and every square of centimeter of skin. Well, so much for that. Ethel toweled her hair dry, pointedly looking away from her reflection as she did, and put on her pajamas. Why does she sleep with a bandana? That's weird. Then she retreated to her bedroom, which wasn't really hers. Not anymore. It was Manny's. He had remade this room in his image, and Ethel didn't much like what she saw. It was a room which was obviously meant for a teenage boy, so much so that she felt like an interloper. Manny might not have been there to chase her out of his room, but his disdain, I think it's supposed to be disdain, lingered. She didn't belong here. And the bandana is gone. Maybe she was wearing it to, like, wash her face or something. Feeling displaced and disoriented, she lay back on Manny's sheets and let her eyelids fall shut. Had the events of that night really happened? Had the girl truly kissed her? It was hard to say. Everything had unfolded with a subtle sense of surreality. Surreality? No surreality. The girl's voice, light and irreverent enough, a mirror the beating of a butterfly's wings. I can't read anymore, I'm sorry. It's been a while. Now Ethel had put some time and some distance between herself and the girl, she found it even harder to believe what had happened. What reason would the girl have had to loiter about at St. Catherine's Church so very late at night? Oops. Ethel had found it hard to come to terms with Clementine's affections when her ex-girlfriend, had confessed to her, but she found it harder still to accept this girl's feelings. Clementine's septum had been pierced. She had dyed her hair pink, she had kept a Tumblr blog long after Tumblr had stopped being cool, and in her childhood she'd written fanfiction about Sam and Dean Winchester from Supernatural kissing. Clementine hadn't been perfect. Clementine had been more than willing to admit that she wasn't perfect, and she had since disavowed the problematic fanfictions. I don't care about the fucking... I don't care about the supernatural incest, okay? I really don't. Clementine had been brash and loud and brassy, and had intimidated Ethel when she had first met her at the university's writing club. Ethel hadn't ever imagined what a cheerful, outgoing, and interesting girl like that would even care about her. But she had been... I don't care about the history, actually. Can we get back to... I'm really sorry, guys. I really wanted to give this game a chance. I'm really excited for it, but I just... The writing is starting to grate me a little bit. Was she really human? Alright, let's pick up from here. Ethel couldn't imagine the girl at the church crying. She couldn't imagine her blushing, and she definitely couldn't imagine her shipping Sam. I don't care. The girl seemed removed from petty concerns like fandom drama. What interests did she even have, anyway? How did she fill up her free time, beyond kissing complete strangers in churches late at night? Ethel tried to furnish a past for the girl, some sort of backstory, but kept coming up blank. Like the awkward pieces of an old jigsaw puzzle, nothing quite seemed to fit. The girl was an enigma, just like the woman from the famous Byron poem that literature professors still talked about 2 centuries later. She walks in beauty like the night. Who was she, though? Where was she going, and what was she thinking? Perhaps she wasn't going anywhere or thinking anything. The woman who walked in beauty never managed to arrive at her destination. How could she, when she didn't have one? Beautiful people didn't need to do, they only needed to be. Ethel was unsure, however, if the girl really was. She didn't feel real. None of that night felt real. Ethel, meanwhile, felt far too real for comfort. Her hair was still wet from her bath, and was soaking the sheets. It felt like there was a damp towel pressed against the nape of her neck, and it made her squirm. It wasn't exactly comfortable, but she was too tired to get up and dry her hair again, much too lazy to hunt for her mother's hairdryer. She would simply leave it be. Slowly as she lay there, sleep began to creep up on her. It clouded her senses, dulling them until her thoughts felt oddly hazy. Ethel could still hear the rain as it fell outdoors. You mean outside? But it was very faint and indistinct, hardly audible. The soft pitter-patter of these scattered raindrops mingled with the sighing of the breeze, Ethel's own exhalations. Once again, Ethel thought of the strange girl and of her strange kiss. We get it, girlie. Ethel saw Clementine in her mind's eye, with her sweet smile and her fluffy pink hair, but she was beginning to skew, to twist, to split apart. Like a reflection viewed in film of water's undulating surface, Ethel couldn't pin it down. One of Clementine's eyeballs fell out of its socket. Her mouth began to melt. She was starting to shift. Ethel wasn't picturing Clementine, not anymore. It was the girl from the church instead. Ethel saw her vivid eyes, her pale skin, her legs, so slender like a ballet dancer. She thought of how those legs had swished back and forth like metronomes. The girl smiled at her. Then, Ethel's consciousness failed her and she fell asleep. Ethel's sleep was anything but restive, however. In her dreams, which were faint and half-formed, she was in the forest again, flanked on all sides by walls of dark, damp vegetation. The forest was pushing about her just like the living creature. It throbbed, and Ethel felt her own heart throbbing in tandem with it. She was running, her bare soul sinking into the dirt, though she had no idea what she was running from. I didn't know what was pursuing her. What was it that chased her in the dark, lurking among the trees? Ethel thought to turn her head, if only to discover the identity of her shadowy assailant, but she couldn't afford to let her attention wander. Tripping and falling would spell disaster. Ethel continued to run, on, her heart hammering in her chest all the while. Her hair fluttered as she skirted the trees, and her long shirt billowed about her. She turned this way and that, searching desperately for an escape, but part of her already knew that it was too late. Her shadowy pursuer was fast approaching. It was much quicker than she was. She could never hope to outrun it. That's a concerningly familiar description of a nightmare? Oh yeah. It's a very common nightmare to have. She could never outpace it. It would find her, and when it did, its lips would curl upwards in the corners, its teeth sharp as knife points glinting in the moonlight. It would sink its fangs into her neck. Then it would tear out her throat. She would scream, of course, as she oozed red-black blood, and then, suddenly, Ethel stumbled. Her right leg snagged on the root of a tree, and she fell. She tumbled forwards, her arms flapping, her eyes wide and afraid. But she didn't hit the ground. Instead, she woke up, tangled amongst her sheets like a fish in a net, gasping for air. Her face was uncomfortably flushed despite being another cold morning, and her palms were slick with sweat. There was an unpleasant taste in the back of her mouth, like mold or decay, and her tongue felt oddly furry. Had she forgotten to brush her teeth last night? Ethel tried to cast her mind back, but she couldn't. Her mind felt like it had been scrubbed clean, her thoughts a vague, hazy blur. Furry? No, not like the animal. Furry, like as in fur. Get out of here. Don't make me get the spray bottle. The back of her head hurt. Her limbs were aching, as though she had really been dashing through the woods in a desperate bid for her life. But the remnants of her dream were fast beginning to fade, exposed to the daytime light which was filtering through the windows. Hang on, I have to cough now. Alright, let's go. Ethel sat up, then pressed her palm against her forehead. It felt clammy. Was she getting sick? She hoped she hadn't caught a fever after wandering about in the rain. She didn't want to prove Mr. Brown right. No, she supposed, not that it mattered much at all. She doubted she'd be seeing him again. Ethel blinked, her eyelids heavy, and stared at the wall of the bedroom. A bedroom which had once been hers. I don't care, we get it. This is not your bedroom anymore. Blah blah blah, old furniture, stuff. PC, I don't care about the description of the room. She didn't belong here. She was no longer wanted. Had she ever been? Ethel sniffed. The wall blurred and she wiped her eyes fiercely at the back of her arm. What is wrong with you? Sharply, she scolded herself. Stop thinking too much. You'll never get anything done like that. Ethel pressed the heel of her palm against her eyes so hard her vision blurred. Then she forced herself to stand. She threw aside the covers of her bed and set about her day. Not that there was much of a day left. It was already 1 o'clock. How could she have slept for such a long time? At university, she'd gotten into the habit of waking up early in the morning, 8 AM if not sooner, for her lectures. She'd been letting things slide at her parents, maybe because she'd gotten into the holiday spirit. She didn't have any lectures to attend. I don't care. Didn't have anything to do. Okay. This thought was depressing. Okay. The days were short. Don't care. It was cold. Ethel shivered as she changed out of her pajamas and into her casual clothes. The same sweater she had worn last night and the same shapeless skirt, which had been left to dry on the radiator. You're not supposed to leave clothes to dry on the radiator, you fucking idiot. She didn't care enough about her appearance to roddle about her suitcases for any other clothes, and everything hung up inside the wardrobe now belonged to Manny. Once she tied back her hair into plaids, she then set about her day. She meant to work on her thesis. She would work on her thesis, but first she would have breakfast. Yay, fire hazard. Exactly. Her house could have burned down that night. Ethel made herself a cheese toastie in the kitchen, using the toastie press. I don't care about how she made the toastie. Made sure to check for moldy crumbs. Ethel ate her toastie and sipped her cup of peppermint tea she made herself, but it wasn't enough to satisfy her appetite. All of a sudden, she felt ravenous. She made another toastie, with ham this time, bright pink like sunburnt skin. She ate that in silence too, and a second cup of peppermint tea. 2 cups of peppermint tea? Girlie, you are going to be sitting on the shitter fighting for your life. Peppermint tea is a natural laxative. Ethel even thought after the ham and cheese toastie she could go for a third, but it was here that she stopped herself. There wasn't much bread left, nor much cheese, and she didn't fancy trekking to the corner shop. She wasn't in a mood for human interaction. Ethel washed the toastie press in the sink, if only to stop herself from daydreaming about a third toastie, and set it on the rack to dry. I mean, you wipe down and you clean a toastie, sure, but you don't, like, proper cover it in water in the sink, do you? Maybe it's a different kind of cheese toastie, like cheese press. Because my ones are all electrical, and, like, you don't want to damage them, or whatever. I've got my second cup of mint tea, should I be concerned? You may or may not be pooping ferociously later. This task accomplished, she brewed a third cup of tea and took her mug into the living room. I mean, she is British, so it makes sense, I guess. She would work on her thesis later. She still had time. First, she wanted to see what was on TV. There was nothing wrong with that, was there? She needed to relax. She flipped through the channels, but nothing caught her fancy. They were mostly showing old Christmas movies. It was appropriate, Ethel supposed given to the season, but she wasn't in the mood to watch Hollywood actors wearing fat suits. For want of anything else to do, Ethel wound up rifling through the DVD shelf. Manny might have thrown away her old wind chimes and her fairy figures, but her DVDs were still here. Box sets of... I don't think you should be dropping all of these, like, existing IPs into your visual novel. Maybe that's just me. I think it's kind of weird. I always drink a ton of mint tea, but it's not like I had such bad... Yeah, you've never had bad digestive issues because you drink your mint tea. It's recommended when people have bad, like, intestinal or, like, gut issues that they try drinking mint tea for a while. That's why I bought my thing of mint tea ages back. I had really, really bad gut issues. The series was old and definitely corny, but that's where all of the appeal was. I don't care. Okay, so this is cup of tea number 4. Or snaffle some stacks for the kitchen. Before she knew it, the day disappeared. When Ethel checked her phone, it was almost 9 o'clock. Where had the time gone? Ethel gnawed worryingly at the end of her plait. Oh, her hair. As she weighed up her options. It wasn't too late to start on her thesis, I suppose. She wasn't tired despite being pitch black outside, largely because she'd woken up so late herself. She could still make some progress if she applied herself. Oh yeah, lowering of libido is not a huge deal. She just had to focus. Oh. Ethel's thoughts were soon interrupted by the ringing of the kitchen. It was a rarely used landline. Somebody was calling her, but who and why? Wasn't it a bit too late to receive any calls? Part of Ethel hoped stupidly that it was Clementine, calling at long last to check up on her. She soon dismissed the thought, however. A fleeting fancy. Clementine hadn't spoken to her in a fortnight. Oh, it's been 2 weeks, girlie. It's been 2 weeks. Calm down. Actually, the first few weeks are probably when it hurts the most, so, you know. Ethel couldn't see any reason why she would do so now. Not if she hadn't bothered calling during Christmas or New Year's. And the impersonation of the I don't want to be horny, I want to be happy me. That's fair and valid, honestly. There was nothing special about the date. It wasn't anybody's birthday. Besides, if Clementine had wanted to call her, she would have called Ethel's ancient Samsung. Ethel's mobile had been silent all day, however, and the day before that, and the day— I don't care. No one wants to call you. I get it. I don't care. Can we pick up the phone, please? Can we pick up the phone? Okay. We've picked up the phone. Not yet. Okay, we've picked it up. Hello? This is... Oh, Lauren. I think that's Mum. Oh, hello there, honey. I'm glad I finally got through to you. It took a minute. I was worried I was having trouble with the connection. I texted you a couple of times, but you didn't reply. I was starting to wonder about you. All alone in the house? Is there any choice in this game? Well, the Steam page said there was only one ending, so I don't think so. I will admit, though, chat, I am getting really bored. And it's not to say, like, it's... Okay, I'll be honest. It is the writing. It is the writing. That's got me so bored. I get the idea of a slow burn. I get it. But the Steam page also said that this game was only 2 to 4 hours long. We're almost 3 hours in and all we've had is a quick kiss. So, I'm not particularly enjoying it. How have you been? Are you hanging in there? Everything's okay, isn't it? Ethel took a step back, unnerved by the sudden deluge of words from the other end of the line. She wasn't sure how to answer this. How had she be hanging in there, metaphorically speaking? She was still alive, at least, but she didn't necessarily feel it. I don't care, I get it. You're a depressed lesbian. I'm fine, I guess. That's great, Effie. I hope things are going well. And what time is it over there? It's 8 over here, so we've only just woken up. We'll be on our way to brekkie soon. Very like Lauren, she had a way of infantilizing her own speech, breaking down words like one might be talking to a baby. What? What are you talking about? She didn't dumb down her words at all. She said, what time is it? It's 8 o'clock here. We just woke up. We're gonna have breakfast. What do you mean she's breaking down her words as if you're a baby? She didn't do that. I'm waiting for Manny. You know how he is in the mornings. He's awful for it. Ethel, we get it. I know. We get it. You're 21, you're depressed, you're a lesbian, and you think your parents hate you. Which, to be fair, I don't have a single reason to believe that your parents hate you right now. Oh, yes, I know. Ethel knows only too well. I don't care about your story with your brother. Can we please? Look at this! This has been, like, this is like 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 paragraphs just talking about how her brother is not good at waking up early in the morning. We don't need 11 paragraphs talking about how your brother is a night owl. We need 11 paragraphs about you kissing this woman in the church. It's almost 9 here, Ethel said in response to her mother's earlier question, a reply which, though Ethel could not see it, she was sure made her mother blink. In the morning, dear? No, in the evening. It's pitch black outside and Australia is... I don't care, I know this. What is she, Stephen King? She might be, I don't know. You're always on top of things, Effie. You're such a smarty pants. She's not. She's trying to sound smart when she's not. I don't think so. Oh, but you are. Don't be so hard on yourself. You need to learn how to take a compliment. Now, how's that thing you've been working on? Thing? Yes, you know, the thing for your uni, what is it called again? You're referring to my thesis? Yes, that's right, your thesis. How's it going, baby girl? I hope, well, I would hope. How's it going, baby girl? Well, I hope. What? That doesn't make sense, whatever. Try sounding smart, you actually sound dumb. Oh, everything's alright, I guess. That's great, honey. I'm glad to hear it. Your mother is rooting for you. You've got this. Lauren might not have understood what Ethel was studying, but at least her support was genuine. Ethel knew that her mother really was rooting for her, regardless of what happened. I don't care. I get this. Well, I'll leave you to it then, my little genius. Study hard, but not too hard. You know what they say, all work and no play makes Effie a dull girl. Go and have fun if you can. Not that there's much to do around Oxbury, I'll admit. Still, you could always get the car, maybe go for a drive to Marston? I just unconsciously threw a hard candy into my mouth and crushed it with my teeth. Well, that sounds like that hurt. I can't drive, Mum. I didn't pass the test. Okay, I don't care. They're talking about driving now. Okay, I'll get back to you later, Effie. Okay, good. Call's done. Yes, goodbye. It wasn't hard, but it was very minty mint. Oh, I love mint candy. Love mint candy. There was a click on the other end of the line, then there was nothing. Lauren had gone. Yeah, I get it. I get it. I don't care what Lauren's... I don't care about your history. Speaking of food, Ethel could hear her stomach rumbling. Maybe it was time to root through the fridge again. With some luck, she might be able to find something worth eating. Ethel commenced her search, and was soon rewarded with some spoils, which looked promising. At the back of the fridge, covered by a taut layer of cling film, was a shallow baking tray full of her mother's cherry pie. Lauren wasn't the best cook. Oh, I don't care. I don't care. Eat the cherry pie, girl. I don't need 11 paragraphs talking about how your mum was anxious about the trip and then made a pie. Okay, wait, there's a note on it. We've already left for the airport, love, she'd written in loopy cursive, picked out in patchy blue biro. So don't worry about us or wonder where we are. I'm sure we'll be fine. I couldn't sleep last night, so I made some cherry pie. It's cooling in the fridge right now. Have as much as you want. If you don't, it'll go to waste. Love you, Effie. See you later. Stay safe. Okay, blah blah blah, eating. A few days since her parents left for Australia. I'm gonna be honest, chat, I am not having fun. I'm not having fun. I was trying to be nice at the start of the stream, right? Because maybe it was just an interesting writing style. Maybe it was just like something a little bit like unconventional. But it's just kind of annoying. I honestly phase out every so often. Yeah. It's honestly kind of annoying. The way that this author has decided to write their visual novel. And I'm very disappointed. I'm really disappointed in it, chat, because I was very excited for this game. And I was very excited for this game for one particular reason. Let me see if I can find it. Is screen capture still working? It is, okay. So, I was really excited for this game because there was a particular image that I saw. Where is it? I don't know if I'll be able to find it, like, right away. But there's an image that I saw. This is, like, a very heavily cropped version of it, right? But I saw this picture and I was like, oh my god, I don't want to know anything else about this game. Like, I just want to sit down and play it and, like, enjoy it. And I'm not enjoying it. I'm not enjoying it. I'm trying to find the image, like, outside of just this cropped version of it. But I don't think I'll be able to. Oh, here it is. This is the image that I saw. Right? And so naturally I saw this and I was like, oh my god, this looks really cool. Like, I love mushrooms. On Steam, it was, it said that it was a dark romance with body horror elements. And I was like, dude, hell yeah. And I know that a lot of visual novels have a slow burn to them, right? Which generally is why I don't play a lot of them on stream. If I want to play a visual novel, generally speaking, I play it off stream. With the exception of this. But that being said, there's a difference between slow burn and making 3 of the 4 hours of your visual novel just nothing, you know? Like, because I checked, and this game has a 2 to 4 hour playtime, and we are currently 3 hours in. So, like, you know what I mean? It's just not, it's not hitting, you know? And so it's kind of reached a point where I still really want to see this. I still really want to see the mushroom stuff, but I don't want to actually sit through the visual novel and read it to get to that point. I will probably watch someone else go through the rest of it. I'm kind of done. I'm kind of done, if I can be perfectly honest. I will save though, just in case I do decide to come back to it at some point. And I'm gonna close the game. I am also gonna go pee really quick, because I need to pee. And I don't know what we're gonna do after this. I don't know if I will boot up something else. I don't have anything else lined up, because my backup game we were playing, we ended up playing yesterday. So I'm gonna go pee. And then we're gonna have to figure out whether or not we're gonna keep playing something, whether or not we're gonna watch something, or whether or not I'm just gonna end the stream and, like, eat the rest of my sandwich. But let me pee and figure it out. I'll be back. Alright, chat, I'm back, and I think we're just gonna pack it up. I don't have anything, like, that we can play in the back. I could play more Eden Wound, but I'm feeling really tired. My throat is really sore from reading the visual novel, like, reading it aloud for you guys. And like I said, my nose is starting to get stuffy. That's how sore my throat is. My nose is like, oh, we gotta start producing mucus. It's really weird. So I'm gonna wrap up now. But we're gonna be doing something infinitely more interesting tomorrow. We're gonna be starting our Pokemon Brilliant Diamond Nuzlocke, which I have attempted once before, a couple of years ago, and I quit because my Shinx died. And if Shinx died, I just didn't have the heart to carry on. So, we're gonna wrap up for now. I'm gonna go finish my sandwich, rest my throat. We're gonna do the Pokemon Nuzlocke tomorrow. I haven't figured out quite what I want to do, but I do want to have something fun for subscribers to be able to contribute. I don't know what it's going to be, but I do want to have a fun subscriber element to the Nuzlocke, just to kind of, like, you know, celebrate the people who decide to support the channel financially. But we'll figure that out when we get there. So, stay warm, stay cozy, stay toasty. If you sneezed during the stream at all, bless you. Revive Pokemon? No, it's a Nuzlocke. Oh, you mean if people subscribe, they can revive a Pokemon? That? Ooh, I'll have to ask the Discord server. I have to ask the Discord server how they feel about that. Because that kind of defeats the purpose of a Nuzlocke, but it is a really fun idea. So we'll see. But for now, stay warm, stay cozy, stay toasty. If you sneezed during the stream at all, bless you. And I'm sorry that we didn't get to the lesbians. I'm sorry. Oh my god, Kyra, this is the worst possible time. We're wrapping up early tonight. The lesbians was not a very good game. So I hope that I can see you tomorrow though. It's okay, still. I'm too late. I'm sorry, Kyra. But we'll be back tomorrow. We're gonna do a Pokemon Nuzlocke tomorrow. So I'll see you all later. Goodbye, everyone.